For years his hands were not his own, forced to slaughter, forced to destroy. This is the sound of his vengeance. The world burns. Under a blood-red sky, monsters swarm through ruined cities, and a lone warrior cuts down the last remnants of humanity. This is the New World Order, a living hell he helped create. In the heart of the chaos, a massive explosion of light erupts, vaporizing an entire army in a single, devastating flash. Two warriors, the last of their kind, collide with the force of a meteor strike, sending shockwaves tearing through the ravaged land. It's a blur of deadly motion. Swords clash, one glowing with a sinister purple aura, the other with the pure white light of a dying hope. Their blades meet again, the impact unleashing another blinding wave of golden energy. This is a battle that will decide the fate of the world. And once more, a colossal explosion rocks the battlefield, tossing rubble and bodies into the air like weightless dolls. A single, powerful strike slams into the earth, cracking the very ground beneath them. Gasping for breath, the Empire's greatest swordsman, Hades, looks up in grim awe. He knows the name of the monster standing before him, the Knight of Hell. And there he is, the Death Knight, an unstoppable force of destruction standing over the broken body of yet another victim. With a heavy, deliberate step, he crushes Hades' sword beneath his boot, a final, silent declaration of his absolute dominance. He raises his massive, demonic sword, its jagged edges promising a swift and brutal end. His glowing red eyes are cold, empty, and fixed on his target. But for a fleeting moment, something flickers. A human eye, amber and filled with a deep, hidden sorrow, appears for just an instant before the demonic red returns. His expression settles back into a grim mask of determination. This is a duty he cannot escape. With a final, weary sigh, the Empire's last champion falls. Silence descends upon the battlefield. Humanity's final fortress now stands as a smoldering tomb. The Empire's tattered flag, scorched and torn, flutters in the hot wind, a ghost of a forgotten kingdom. A cloaked figure surveys the destruction, clenching his fist in triumph. He muses to himself that revenge is a dish best served cold, no matter how long it takes. He gloats, his voice rasping with glee. After 1,000 years, his dream is finally a reality. The joy is almost too much to bear. A twisted, skeletal grin spreads across his face as a chilling laugh echoes through the ruins. The Archlich, Dorgo, has won. Chained and helpless, the defeated Emperor, Howard Adel Light, screams in pure agony, demanding to know how Dorgo could slaughter all his people. He calls him a filthy devil, asking if the depths of hell weren't enough for him. Dorgo just smiles, savoring the Emperor's despair like fine wine. Dorgo cuts him off, bored. He announces it's time for his coronation. The Emperor can only stare back, choking out that it's nonsense. Dorgo just scoffs. For the first time in history, the entire continent is unified under one rule. With a chilling laugh, he declares that the title of Emperor fits him perfectly. The words land like a final death blow, crushing the Emperor's last flicker of hope. His feet dangle lifelessly above the ground, a final grim monument to his fallen empire. Dorgo turns to his commanders, his voice booming with authority, congratulating his demon kings and the Death Knight for their service. He then commands them to bring him the imperial crown. The crown glimmers with a soft, golden light, a symbol of absolute power now tainted by darkness. The Death Knight, flanked by his monstrous peers, steps forward holding the ultimate prize. He walks silently toward his master, preparing to hand over the key to this new, dark world. Dorgo addresses him directly, calling him his most loyal knight. He praises him for his role in the victory and wonders aloud how he should be rewarded. The Death Knight says nothing, his glowing red eyes unblinking, fixed on the Lich. He continues to hold the crown, his silence hanging heavy and unnerving in the air. Dorgo chuckles, dismissing the question as foolish. After all, the knight is his slave. He declares that serving him is the only reward he needs. But just as he speaks, the crown is suddenly ripped from his grasp. Dorgo watches, his jaw agape in stunned confusion, as the crown is pulled away. In a flash of defiant purple light, the Death Knight crushes the golden crown in his gauntlet. The demon kings recoil in shock. A violent surge of red energy erupts from the Death Knight's fist. This is not obedience, this is rebellion. The raw, untamed aura swirls around him, crackling with suppressed fury. The energy explodes outward, blasting the Demon Kings and sending them flying back. The Death Knight lets out a pained gasp, his body trembling from the sudden release of his own power. "What are you doing?" Dorgo screams, his voice filled with rage and disbelief. He can't understand how he was harmed, shouting that his defenses were perfect. In a voice cold with centuries of stored hatred, the knight finally speaks. He says he is finally moving on his own. Not by command. His eyes flare with a fierce, defiant green light. He declares that from this moment on, he moves by his own will. Dorgo is stunned. He sputters that he completely erased the knight's mind. But the knight calmly replies that it only seemed that way. His consciousness never truly vanished. He reveals that he was awake the entire time, a helpless prisoner trapped inside his own body, forced to watch as his hands became instruments of pure destruction. Dorgo is speechless, the reality of the situation slowly dawning on him. But then, a slow, twisted smile spreads across the Lich's face. He calls the knight his greatest masterpiece and, as a reward, says he will allow him to vent his anger. But he adds a chilling threat. It will only last until he figures out how to regain control. As if on cue, the Demon Kings recover and lunge at the knight. The Death Knight is completely unfazed. He meets their attack head-on, his body radiating a suffocating dark purple energy. Dorgo watches, a flicker of alarm in his glowing eye sockets as he senses the shift in power. With a single, devastating burst of raw power, the Death Knight obliterates them all. Dorgo is stunned. His elite commanders, his most powerful servants, were annihilated in a single strike. Realizing the true danger he's in, Dorgo decides he can't hold back any longer. He summons his true army. Legions of the undead claw their way out of the ground, their bodies glowing with a sickly green light. The undead horde swarms forward, a tidal wave of bone and rotting flesh meant to overwhelm any foe. But the Death Knight simply stands his ground, a lone figure against an endless sea of monsters. He simply says, "Stop." An incredible wave of purple energy erupts from him, a wall of pure will that halts the entire army in its tracks. With a glare of absolute authority, he commands them to surrender. The undead legion freezes, crackling under the strain of his overwhelming power. Then, with a single contemptuous flick of his will, he shatters the entire army, reducing them to nothing more than dust and bone fragments. Dorgo can't believe his eyes. This is impossible. He realizes with dawning horror that he didn't just create a powerful servant, he created a being with the power of a god. Regaining his composure, Dorgo tries a different tactic. He claims to understand the knight's fury, saying he'd feel the same. But he warns him not to get cocky. Even if his body is destroyed, his soul will simply find a new vessel. This fight is far from over. The knight just scoffs. He tells Dorgo that for all those years he was trapped, he thought of only one thing: how to kill him for good. Dorgo's confidence wavers as the knight begins to gather an immense amount of energy, a swirling vortex of brilliant blue light. His face becomes a mask of pure hatred as he reveals his ultimate trump card, a sword technique he created specifically to sever the soul itself. Dorgo panics, screaming that a technique like that could never exist. The knight becomes a bolt of pure energy, rocketing towards the Lich. For the first time in centuries, Dorgo feels true fear and tries to dodge. But it's useless. The attack is too fast, and Dorgo can only watch in terror as it closes in. The attack moves like a phantom, passing straight through his physical form. For a moment, Dorgo is confused. It seems to have missed. He starts to laugh, relieved that such a technique was just a bluff. But his laugh is cut short by a blood-curdling scream as the attack finds its real target. We see the knight standing behind him, his impossible technique having already struck its mark. A thin, shimmering line of light appears, piercing straight through the ethereal form of Dorgo's soul. Dorgo's eyes widen in absolute terror as he feels his very essence being torn apart from the inside. The light explodes from within, a brilliant flash that signals the final, agonizing end of the Archlich. His empty skull clatters to the ground, the malevolent light in its eyes finally extinguished forever. The rest of his ancient skeletal body crumbles into a pile of dust. The knight looks down at the skull, his voice low and heavy with satisfaction. Go to hell. With one final, crushing stomp, he obliterates the last remnant of his hated master. The emperor watches from the distance, completely stunned by the impossible turn of events. He can only mutter to himself, wondering what in the world is happening, as the knight stands alone and victorious. And then, it's over. The knight's strength gives out, and he collapses to his knees, his entire body trembling with exhaustion. He lets out a ragged, shaky breath. It's finally done. The revenge he spent a lifetime dreaming about is complete. But there's one last debt to pay. He raises his sword, not as a weapon, but as a tool for his own end. He thinks to himself that he needs to apologize to them, even if it's the last thing he does. The reflection in the blade shows not a monster, but the eye of a man filled with unbearable sorrow and regret, even if he can only meet them in death. A tear escapes his eye as he remembers the faces of those he was forced to kill, the ones he loved most. He has to tell them he's sorry. He has to apologize to his family. With that final, heartbreaking thought, his life force begins to fade. His body slumps forward, the long, terrible war finally over. A soft voice calls out a name, Ian. And then, another. Damien? He knows that voice. Could it really be her? Louise? A gentle, warm light fills his vision as consciousness fades. The voice asks again, Damien, why are you sleeping out here? He forces his eyes open, greeted by a familiar silhouette against a bright, clear sky. The face comes into focus. It's her. He thinks with a wave of relief that at least he gets to see her one last time before the end. But then he notices something is wrong. He asks her why she looks so young. She just laughs, playfully asking if he's trying to sweet-talk her before their father gets home. She winks, telling him his big sister has his back, but warns him to hurry inside before it starts to rain. He watches her walk away toward their family's mansion, his mind reeling in confusion. His eyes widen in shock. He remembers this place. He remembers destroying it with his own 2 hands. Is this some kind of dream? Or was everything else the dream? The war, the lich, the endless slaughter. He spots a sturdy-looking tree branch on the ground nearby. He thinks to himself that there's one way to find out for sure. He picks up the branch, its solid weight feeling strangely familiar in his hand. He faces a large boulder, thinking that this will do nicely for a test. He plants his feet, settling into a stance he hasn't used in years, yet knows like the back of his hand. And with a powerful, focused swing, he brings the branch down, channeling the terrifying power he remembers from his past life. His eyes go wide with disbelief at the result. He stumbles back, staring at the massive boulder, completely stunned. A slow, incredulous grin spreads across his face. This is insane. The boulder cracks, then completely shatters into 1,000 pieces from the sheer force of his strike. The power, it's real. A short, breathless laugh escapes his lips, and then another, louder one. The laughter builds into a wild, hysterical cry of pure, overwhelming joy and disbelief. It's the sound of a man who has been given something impossible, a second chance. He falls to his knees among the shattered rocks, panting as the reality of it all finally crashes down on him. He clenches his fist, the feeling of his own young, living hand, undeniable proof. Rain begins to fall from the sky, washing over him. He clutches his chest, completely overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotions. This isn't a dream. This isn't hell. Tears stream down his face, mixing with the falling rain as he finally lets himself believe the impossible. He has truly returned to the past. In his first life, Damien believed he was talentless. But he was wrong. He had a very special talent. He could still hear his father's furious voice echoing in his mind, screaming that he'd completely lost his mind. He remembered the rage, the accusations of causing a scene at a bar and dragging their family's name through the mud. Yes, that was his first talent, the talent for tarnishing his family's honor. He remembered his brother bursting in, demanding to know why he'd picked a fight with the son of a powerful marquis. Because of that stupid, pointless fight, it was his sister who paid the price. The image of her being taken away in a carriage, forced into a political marriage just to clean up his mess, was burned into his memory. As she stared out the window with empty eyes, he discovered his second talent, the talent for destroying his own family's future. And he remembered his mother's heartbroken sobs, begging to know why he'd gambled away their land. And there it was, his third talent, the talent for throwing away everything they had. These memories weren't just thoughts. They were a heavy chain, pulling him down into a sea of failure. And the result of all that so-called talent, damyu, was his father's final, coldest word. Leave. In the darkness of the study, his father's face was a mask of fury, while Damien just stood there, a hollow shell. As he was walking away, a soft voice called his name one last time. It was Louise. She stood alone in the grand hall, holding out a small pouch of coins. With a sad but hopeful smile, she told him he had to be happy. Even then, after everything he'd put her through, she still cared. The memory was like a knife in his gut. How could she say that? Her life was in ruins because of him. She gently placed the money in his hands. But in his pride and shame, he slapped it away. He ran, leaving her standing there alone in the echoing hall. He remembered that day so clearly, the day he became a coward who ran away from the family he destroyed. It was only after he lost everything that he finally understood the crushing weight of guilt. Back in the present, the ring continues to fall around him. Soaking wet and on his knees, one question consumed his thoughts. How did I come back? He stares at his hands. They are young, unscarred, his hands. He remembers his dying wish. He just wanted to apologize. But to actually be sent back in time, it felt impossible. He looks up as the sun finally breaks through the clouds, casting rays of light down on him. Could this really be some kind of miracle? A second chance from the gods? He clenches his fist, feeling the faint strain in the muscles of his young arm. He realizes that at this age, his body was so weak that using even a basic technique was a struggle. The technique was called wave breaking, a simple but effective skill that amplified the force of a single strike several times over. A memory flashes through his mind, a brutal fight from his future life, where he used that very same technique to shatter an enemy's weapon. A memory of him as the Death Knight. He'd learned this technique, after he killed the warrior known as the Castle Wall Destroyer, another soul he'd claimed in his bloody past. Suddenly, a panicked voice cuts through his thoughts. Goodness gracious, young master. A chubby young servant comes running towards him, completely out of breath. Damien recognizes him, a servant of the family. The name was Victor. Yes, that was it. Victor rushes up, frantic. Why are you still out here? Lady Louise said. To come back right away. He warns Damien that his father is beyond furious. Damien just looks at him, his mind still somewhere else, and asks calmly, What did I do? Victor stares at him in disbelief, puffing his cheeks out in frustration. How could he possibly ask that? But Damien is silent, his expression unreadable. Back at the Haxine estate, a furious roar echoes from within. You bastard! Damien walks in just as his father charges, swinging a wooden practice sword. But Damien moves with an unnatural speed, easily sidestepping the blow and catching his father's arm in a firm grip. His father stumbles, shocked by his son's impossible reflexes. These weren't the movements of a lazy, undisciplined boy. Held back by his wife and daughter, his father is still seething with rage, shouting that Damien has brought shame on them all. Damien just listens, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. It's all coming back now. His father's yelling, the threats, he realizes with a strange sense of calm. So, this is the moment I return to. His mother and sister plead with his father to calm down, but Damien is lost in his own world. He thinks to himself, how long has it been since I was scolded by my father? He looks at them, his father Paul, his mother Marilda, his sister Louise. They're all alive, they're all here. A profound wave of longing washes over him, and he whispers, I miss this so much. His family just stares back, completely baffled by his bizarre reaction. He then adds quietly, but still, you were a little too mean. His father, still fuming, demands to know what pathetic excuse he has this time. Damien looks his father straight in the eye and says with quiet finality, I have none. The answer hangs in the air, catching his father completely off guard. What? You have none? He sputters. He can't believe it. The old Damien was always full of excuses. Damien thinks to himself that hearing his father say that stings because it was absolutely true. Damien looks at him, his voice steady. I have sullied the honor of our family. It is entirely my fault, and there is no excuse. His father is taken aback by this sudden, shocking maturity. He scoffs, saying that talk is cheap and he won't let this go. Damien simply bows his head. I will make up for it. The room falls silent. His father is utterly speechless. Damien takes a step forward, his eyes burning with a new purpose. I will fix every mistake I have made. Then he turns to leave. He glances back over his shoulder, a small, confident smile on his face. I'll be back to accept my punishment properly. His family is left standing in stunned silence, completely bewildered by the man their son has suddenly become. His father can only wonder if Damien hit his head a little too hard during that bar fight. Damien travels to the bustling merchant city of Landwork. Victor, his loyal servant, nervously announces their arrival at the infamous bar. "Young master, are you really going in?" Victor whispers. "I've heard rumors this place is backed by the syndicate. Something bad could happen." Damien just glances at him. "If you're scared, you can go back." Victor immediately panics, insisting he could never abandon his master. Damien reassures him. "Don't worry, I'm just here to sincerely apologize. What could possibly go wrong?" He looks at the building with a determined smile. "I'm going to make things right." Victor can only pray that's true as they walk towards the entrance. From a nearby rooftop, unseen eyes watch Damien's approach. As Damien walks, he thinks to himself, "I don't know how I came back, but if some god really has given me another chance..." A vision of his family's faces flashes in his mind. "I will not let them get hurt again." He remembers the shame of his old talent of trampling on his family's future. This time will be different. Two thugs guarding the door notice him. One of them, casually flipping a knife, grunts in recognition. They step forward, blocking his path. "Hey, little noble," one of them sneers. "We told you not to show your face around here again." Damien thinks, "It's been so long, I barely remember, but these two seem familiar." He states his purpose clearly. "I came to apologize to the owner for my actions last time." The two thugs just stare at him for a moment. Then, one of them bursts out laughing. He mocks Damien for trying to act all respectable now, calling out to his boss inside. A voice from inside comments that he'd heard Damien was just a worthless loudmouth, but maybe he has some manners after all. One thug leans over to the other and whispers, "Hey, I heard his sister is a real beauty." The other grins. "Oh, really?" So there is something useful about that family. The first thug grabs Damien's chin, his voice turning slimy. "Hey, young master, I've suddenly decided I want to accept your apology." He leans in, licking his lips. "How about you introduce me to that pretty sister of yours?" His friend laughs, telling him to stop before he makes the little noble cry. Damien's plan for a simple, peaceful resolution is quickly falling apart. He sighs to himself. "This is harder than I thought." In a flash, Damien's hand moves, a blur too fast for the thug to even register. The thug's knife is now in Damien's hand. He had really hoped he could just apologize and leave. The thug, furious, screams that he's lost his mind. Damien realizes his mistake. He overestimated himself, or rather, he overestimated them. These men wouldn't understand a simple apology. The thug lunges at him, screaming threats. But Damien is no longer the pathetic boy they threw out last time. He moves with cold, deadly precision. A quick, clean slash. Deep cuts appear across the thug's chest and face. The thug collapses, screaming in agony. The second thug freezes, hand on his own sword. Damien turns to him, his voice dropping to an icy whisper. "Since you're so curious." An intense, dark pressure erupts from Damien. His eyes glow with a faint, menacing red light. The shadow of the Death Knight looming behind him. "I'll show you exactly what the Haxon family's roughneck son is really like." Hidden around a corner, Victor can only stammer. Young master," he wails in pure terror, his face a mask of absolute fear. "I thought you were going to make things right." A sharp, piercing scream cuts through the noise of the city street. Passers-by stop and stare, but no one dares get close. Hiding behind a wall, Damien's servant Victor can only tremble in absolute terror. The remaining thug stares at his fallen friend, threatening Damien, asking if he has any idea who he just messed with. But Damien just brandishes the stolen knife, his voice dripping with contempt. He tells the thug he doesn't care who they are and that he should come and finish what he started. The thug roars, flexing a snake tattoo on his fist. He boasts that no one gets away with crossing his crew, the Black Snake. That name. A memory finally clicks into place. Yes, Damien thinks, now I remember. The Black Snake, a nasty criminal organization that was just beginning to spread its influence around this time. And this bar was one of their main fronts. The original incident comes flooding back. He was here, complaining that they'd overcharged him for bad food. And for that simple complaint, he got a fist to the face. He remembers them beating him, mocking him in front of a crowd as he begged them to stop, promising to pay whatever they wanted. It was the ultimate humiliation. But now, seeing it all from a new perspective, a slow, dangerous smirk spreads across Damien's face. He thinks to himself, Shouldn't I be the one getting an apology here? The thug just stares, confused by this sudden, chilling confidence. The thug raises his sword, warning Damien not to expect any mercy just because he's a noble. He charges forward with a furious battle cry. But Damien's movement is a complete blur. Before the thug can even process what's happening, Damien has already disarmed him and sent him crashing to the ground. The thug can only stare up in wide-eyed shock as the world turns upside down. He hits the dirt with a pained grunt. The impact knocks all the air from his lungs. He can't even breathe. Damien grabs him by the hair, his eyes glowing with a cold, terrifying light. The killer inside him whispers that just killing them wouldn't be nearly enough. But he holds back. For his family's sake, he has to endure. Instead of taking his life, he brings the pommel of the knife down hard, shattering the man's hand and ending his fighting days for good. He stands over the two groaning thugs, their bodies twitching in agony. They were never even a threat. A voice from inside the bar shouts, demanding to know who the hell is making all the noise. Damien turns to see more syndicate goons pouring out, led by a man in a cheap fur collar. He thinks to himself, "There's more of them." The leader eyes him suspiciously, assuming he must be from a rival gang. Damien calmly explains. He came to apologize, but now realizes he's the one who deserves an apology. He says he has a complaint and demands to see the owner. The leader just scoffs, then threatens to beat the truth out of him. He points a finger at Damien and barks at his men, "Get him!" Damien just lets out a tired sigh. This is quickly becoming a bother. He lets out a short, unimpressed sound of contempt. In a single, blinding flash of motion, he cuts through all of them. He moves so fast they don't even have time to react, disarming and disabling each one in the blink of an eye. He lands gracefully, the entire fight already over. The leader can only stammer, his mind unable to comprehend the impossible speed he just witnessed. His men are all on the ground, groaning in pain, their arms broken or dislocated. Damien catches his breath, a flicker of annoyance on his face. Damn it, he thinks, I'm already panting from just that? This young body is even weaker than he remembered. He asks the terrified leader if he wants to be next. The man's attitude changes instantly, stammering apologies and begging for his life. But as the man begs, Damien's face darkens and he lunges forward without warning. He throws a single, powerful punch. The impact is brutal. Inside the tavern, the patrons jump as the leader's unconscious body slumps to the floor. Every head in the room turns towards the doorway, drinks forgotten. As he was delivering the punch, Damien thinks with cold detachment, "Oops, looks like I went a little too hard." The leader is out cold, a knife held to his throat, completely oblivious. Damien stands over him, his face shadowed and menacing. "This is why you should have listened when I was being nice." He steps into the now silent bar, leaving the pile of defeated thugs outside. The patrons stare in frozen fear. He calmly wipes a smear of blood from his cheek with the flat of the knife, his cold eyes scanning the room. That one simple action breaks the spell. The bar erupts into chaos as people scream and scramble to get away, a child crying for his mother. Damien walks into the now empty room. Finally, all the nuisances are gone. A man appears on the second-floor balcony, demanding to know what all the commotion is about. It's the bar owner, Anderson, furious that his guards have vanished. Damien looks up. "Ah, so you're the owner," he adds casually. "If you mean the guys outside, I took care of them." Anderson freezes. What? The reality hits him like a punch to the gut. This kid took out an entire crew of Black Snake thugs by himself. Anderson demands to know who he is. Damien introduces himself, and the owner recognizes the name Haxon as the local Viscounty. Damien confirms it, clarifying that he isn't here to make a mess. He's here for an apology. Anderson is completely baffled. Damien lays out his case. "This place is overpriced. When I complained, your men beat me and threw me out." He continues, his voice steady but laced with old pain, explaining how that incident branded him a troublemaker. "And because of that," he says, his eyes flashing, "my family and I lost far too much." Anderson just scoffs, pretending to be a confused old man. He asks if Damien is talking about something as flimsy as honor. Then, a malicious grin spreads across his face. He sneers, saying that from what he's heard, the Haxon family doesn't have any honor left to lose. Damien goes deathly still. Anderson leans forward, his voice dripping with condescension. He asks if Damien really thought he'd just apologize. He demands payment for the damages and tells him to stop playing games. Damien's face twists into a chilling grin. "I see," he says with a soft, dangerous tone. "I was actually going to forgive you if you had just said sorry. But if this is how you want to play," in an explosive burst of power, Damien launches himself from the ground floor straight up towards the balcony. The voice of the Death Knight echoes in his mind, cold and final. "You too shall pay." He soars through the air, his hand outstretched like a claw. "For what you just said." The glint in his eye is no longer human. It's the cold, purple light of a killer. He closes the distance in an instant. Anderson is frozen solid with fear, his life flashing before his eyes. But at the last possible second, a cloaked figure appears from nowhere, blocking Damien's attack with a sharp clang of steel. Damien is thrown back, shocked by the sheer power behind the simple block. He lands on his feet, instantly on high alert. This is no mere thug. Anderson, sweating with relief, greets the newcomer. "Sir Ted, you made it just in time." The man, Ted, glances at the knife in Damien's hand and comments that this is quite surprising. Damien sizes him up. The man's stance, his energy, his skill, it's completely out of place. He thinks, "You're not someone who should be working as a bouncer in a place like this." Ted holds his sword at the ready, his unsettling red eyes glowing from beneath his hood. And as Damien stares back, a chilling realization dawns on him. This changes everything. Why, he asks himself, is a knight in a place like this? In this world, there is a special class of warrior known simply as knights. They dedicate their entire lives to mastering the sword, their skill measured in ranks, from a lowly trainee to an apprentice, all the way to a true official knight. Official knights are living legends. They can channel a power known as aura, a force so immense they can shatter mountains with a single swing. They are transcendent beings, capable of slicing through castle walls as if they were made of paper. The bar owner, Anderson, lets out a wild, triumphant laugh. He points a shaking finger at Damien, his confidence completely restored. He boasts that Ted is an apprentice knight, practically a right-hand man to the boss of the Black Snake. With a sneer, he tells Damien that he's as good as dead. Damien just looks up at the cloaked figure. "An apprentice knight?" he thinks to himself, utterly unimpressed. A faint grin plays on his lips. "I guess that explains the weak aura I sensed." Ted freezes, shocked. He can't understand how this kid could have sensed his power when he hadn't even unleashed it yet. Damien puts a hand to his chin, piecing it all together. It finally makes sense why someone with this level of skill is working as a bouncer in a place like this. He says it out loud, his voice echoing in the silent tavern. "It's because you were kicked out. You weren't talented enough to become an official knight, were you?" The insult lands like a physical blow. Anderson whispers to Ted, asking how much it'll cost to get rid of this kid for good. Ted's face contorts with pure rage. The word apprentice echoes in his mind, a constant bitter reminder of his failure. He snarls that they can talk about payment later. He spits on the ground in disgust. Leaping from the balcony with his sword drawn, he screams that he's going to rip that mouth of his apart. Damien calmly raises the small knife to block. Their blades clash with a deafening ring of steel. The force of Ted's aura-infused strike cracks the floorboards. But Damien doesn't budge an inch. Ted lands, surprised by the boy's unexpected strength. He sizes Damien up, realizing this is no ordinary opponent. He notes that for an apprentice, Damien's movements are unrefined, but his attacks are dangerously sharp. Ted's eyes begin to glow as he channels his power. He swings his sword in a wide, glowing arc, forcing Damien to leap back. Damien lands, panting slightly. He knows he's nearing his limit. This young body can't sustain a real fight for long. His first priority has to be building up his stamina. Ted growls, calling him a brat. He challenges him. "Let's see you dodge this." He gathers his aura, pouring all of his energy into his sword. Damien's eyes narrow. He recognizes the form. That's a secret technique. Ted unleashes all his power in a single, devastating downward strike, aiming to end this now. But Damien remains perfectly calm. Then I suppose, he thinks, I should respond in kind. A memory flashes in his mind, a memory of his former master, the Arch-Lich, Dorgo. He remembers a battle in a dark forest. A legendary killer known as the Phantom Assassin, another of Dorgo's elite servants, was complaining that killing all the animals took the fun out of the hunt. And that's why she had warned Damien to get lost if he didn't want to die. He had simply turned and walked away, ignoring her. The assassin, enraged at being ignored, decided he was just another target. "You asked for death," she had hissed, "so I will show you my secret technique." But to the Death Knight, with his enhanced senses, there were no secrets. He could see the truth of the world. The human body is mostly water. And once you reach a certain level of mastery, you could use the Blade of Death, a technique that allowed you to slice through a person as if they were made of liquid, even with a dull blade. He remembers her body, crumpled on the ground. She should have just run when he gave her the chance. But as he had turned away, her eye shot open. Her sliced body reformed into a grotesque, monstrous mass. "I cut you in half!" she screamed in disbelief. "How? Don't tell me you're one of the undead!" He had simply countered with her own power. He had struck her down for good. Her last words were choked with shock, her face twisted into a bloody, insane grin. "You? How could you use my secret technique?" Back in the present, Ted screams in agony. He collapses to the floor, dead. A single, perfect cut right through his heart. Damien looks down, the faint red glow of the Death Knight reflecting in his eyes. It was always the same. They never understood what killed them. After becoming the Death Knight, he had gained a unique, terrifying ability. He holds up the bloody knife, the ability to absorb the skills of his enemies and make them his own. Anderson lets out a choked, terrified shriek, stumbling backwards in pure horror. He's trembling, drenched in sweat, his face pale as a ghost. He drops to the floor and slams his head against the ground in a desperate, groveling bow. "I am so sorry for disrespecting you, Great Lord of Haxan." Damien gestures to a large, open chest overflowing with gold. He asks if this would be enough compensation. He thinks to himself that all he wanted was an apology, but he might as well take the money. He tells the groveling owner, "It's not enough, but I suppose it will have to do." He glances towards the doorway. "What are you doing?" "Get in here and pack this up." Victor peeks around the corner, startled. "Why, yes, young master." As Victor hastily shoves treasure into a bag, he still can't process what he's seen. When on earth did his lazy young master learn to fight like this? As they leave, Anderson and his thugs bow deeply, pleading for them to have a safe trip home. Victor walks behind Damien, his bag bulging with gold, thinking he's never seen so much money in his life. Anderson watches them go, his expression unreadable, but the moment they're out of sight, his face twists with rage. "Oof, I'll get every last coin back from you, you little brat." He vows to report this to the boss of the Black Snake. But before he can finish the thought, a flicker of movement catches his eye. Damien appears beside him in an instant, using the Blade of Death to cleanly slice off both his ears. As Anderson screams, Damien says coldly, "The money almost made me forget about your punishment." He leans in close, his eyes glowing with deadly intent, and delivers a message for the Black Snake. "If you ever lay a hand on my family, I will hunt you all down." Anderson can only clutch his bleeding head and whimper, "You bastard, you won't get away with this." As the sun sets, Damien and Victor walk away, leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. Damien looks at the carnage he's caused. He knows this won't wash away the sins of his past. But in this new life he's been given, he will never disappoint his family again. He turns to his servant with a new sense of purpose. "Let's go home, Victor." Victor, still in a state of awe, can only nod in agreement. A new day dawns, bright and clear. We see a grand estate, the magnificent home of the powerful Lion Bloom family. Inside, a young man, Kyan Lion Bloom, is speaking to his brother. He asks if he's ever heard the saying, "Pain always follows love." His brother looks up from his book, unimpressed. "What are you talking about now? Are you going off to war?" Kyan gives him a sly, predatory smile. "No." His eyes glint with mischief as he says, "I'm going to find love." Back at the Haxan family estate, Damien has finally returned. He yawns, stretching as he walks through the familiar halls. He remarks that it's been a long time since he slept so well. Following behind him with the heavy bag of gold, Victor thinks to himself, "I'm jealous." Victor complains that he was so worried about yesterday's events he couldn't sleep a wink, haunted by visions of flying body parts. Damien just brushes it off, asking if everything didn't turn out fine in the end. Damien admits things went a little sideways, but they got a nice reward for their trouble. More importantly, rumors will now spread about how the person who messed with the Haxan family was utterly destroyed. After that, no one will dare to look down on them again. He adds that the public's perception of him as a good-for-nothing son might even change a little. Victor is surprised by his master's sudden self-awareness, but Victor is still terrified. He points out that they didn't just rough up a few thugs, they took down an apprentice knight hired by the Black Snake Syndicate. Damien replies confidently that no matter how bold the syndicate is, they wouldn't dare attack a noble family openly. And if they try anything sneaky, he'll stop them. He tells Victor not to worry. Victor is somewhat reassured. He has to admit his master's skill with a sword is anything but ordinary, but his curiosity gets the better of him. "By the way, young master," he asks, "when did you learn to use a sword like that?" Damien just gives him a vague, dismissive smile. "Oh, that. I just trained here and there." Victor gives him a skeptical look, clearly not buying it for a second. Suddenly, a furious roar echoes down the hall. "Damien?" It's his father, charging towards them with a look of pure rage. "You brat! Where have you been all day?" He grabs Damien by the collar, demanding to know if he's caused trouble again. Damien remains perfectly calm. "Don't worry, father. Like I said, I took care of everything." His father is taken aback by his composure. Damien then turns to his servant. "Victor, show him." Victor opens the bag, and a mountain of gold coins and jewels spills onto the floor. Damien's parents are stunned into absolute silence. His father can only mutter, "Holy money!" Damien smoothly delivers his fabricated story. He went to the tavern, cleared up a misunderstanding about the bill, and the owner gave them all of this as a sincere apology. His mother is overjoyed, realizing they can finally pay their overdue wages. His father, still reeling from the shock, collapses to the floor, asking if this can possibly be true. Damien calmly replies, "Of course." His mother chimes in that it must be, otherwise where would all this have come from? Damien suggests that if his father still doesn't believe him, he can just ask Victor. He gives his servant a sharp, meaningful look. "Victor, isn't that right?" Under immense pressure, Victor stammers, "Why, yes." Damien turns back to his father and asks if he believes him now. Convinced, his mother celebrates, and his father can only grunt in defeated agreement. His sister Louise looks on, beaming with pride. But Damien knows the truth. He thinks to himself, "This version of me is quite the compulsive liar, isn't he?" Later, Damien is out in the wilderness, panting heavily from exertion. He's pushing his young body to its absolute limit. He runs along the edge of a cliff, his breath coming in ragged, desperate gasps. The physical strain is immense. He leans against a tree, completely exhausted. He assesses his condition. Even though he barely moved in that fight, he was completely out of breath. His body is slow, weak. He has so much to do, and he can't accomplish any of it like this. Still, he pulls a small, glowing potion from his pocket. Thankfully, he managed to snag this from the bar owner's private stash. He had asked Victor what it was. Victor had explained it was a powerful tonic from the Alchemy Academy, designed to boost stamina and energy. The Alchemy Academy, an organization famous for crafting potent magical potions. The memory returns. In his past life, their tonics were so valuable they were traded for their weight in gemstones. A wide, almost greedy grin spreads across his face. Lucky me. He uncorks the vial and downs it in a single gulp. A surge of purple energy courses through his veins. He clenches his fist, feeling the immediate effect. This stuff is potent. He knows what he has to do. To get stronger and fast, he has to build his stamina first. He has to get back to the level he was in his past life. The imposing image of the Death Knight, a being of immense power, flashes in his mind, and he remembers the name of the one who started it all, Dorgo. A cheerful, skeletal face waves at him from the depths of his memory. He knows that in just a few years, the undead army that bastard created will sweep across this world. He clenches his jaw, his eyes burning with determination. Before that happens, I have to gain the strength to kill him myself. Only then will he be able to protect his family's happiness. He takes a deep, steadying breath, steeling his resolve, and with a burst of newfound energy, he starts running again, pushing himself harder than ever before. A silent promise echoes in his mind. This time, I'll kill you for sure, Dorgo. That night, under the cold light of a full moon, we see the Black Snake Syndicate's hideout, a sinister tower looming over the city. Inside, a large, imposing man picks his teeth, muttering, "He's useless now. He was the best we could hire, too. What a waste." One of his underlings glances at the body of Sir Ted lying on the floor. He asks the boss what they should do with him. The boss, Cedric Walker, replies without a second thought. Forget him. Dump the body. The underling is surprised, but Cedric confirms the order. Cedric coldly states that Ted is of no use to them anymore. As he kicks a rat skittering across the floor, he adds that loyalty is cheap. They can always buy more. But then, a soft voice slithers from the shadows. So, this is how it ends. Cedric flinches, startled by the sudden presence. It's Sir Ted, somehow back on his feet. Cedric mocks him, asking if he still has the strength to stand. He offers a condescending deal. If Ted gets treated, maybe he'll consider hiring him again. Ted's hands tremble with rage. He grabs his sword and lunges, screaming, "Screw you, you bastard!" But his desperate attack is easily blocked by another mysterious cloaked figure. Ted is thrown back, his body suddenly engulfed in a strange, dark, purple energy. He struggles against the unseen force, his face a mask of pure terror. What is this? The cloaked figure, a necromancer, turns to Cedric. Boss of the Black Snake, shall he be the first offering for our new contract? Cedric casually waves a hand. Of course. Show me what you can do. Ted is lifted into the air by shadowy tendrils, screaming for them to let him go. The necromancer begins to chant in a strange, ancient tongue. Ted's eyes widen in horror as the dark magic takes hold. Ghoulish, shadowy spirits with gaping mouths and single staring eyes emerge from the swirling energy, swarming around him. They latch onto him, tearing and biting. He begs for his life as the necromancer watches with a sadistic grin. The spirits rip him apart in a vortex of pure darkness. His final, agonizing scream is the last thing anyone hears before his body is completely consumed. A small, mangled piece of flesh drops to the floor. Cedric turns away in disgust, remarking how unpleasant that was. The necromancer asks if he is satisfied. Cedric grumbles, "Yeah, but next time, try to be a little cleaner about it." The necromancer asks about their next target. Cedric explains that someone interfered with their business, but since he's a noble, a direct approach is too risky. A twisted, greedy smile spreads across Cedric's face. He tells the necromancer to make sure the noble suffers. The more damage, the bigger the reward. He hands over a heavy bag of coins as an advance payment. The necromancer takes the money, their scarred face breaking into a sinister grin. "Leave it to me." Damien pushes through the pain, sweat dripping from his face as he forces his body to obey. He pushes himself to the absolute limit, lifting impossibly heavy weights, compelling his muscles to grow. Every single repetition is a grueling struggle, but he refuses to stop. He clenches his fist, feeling the new strength flooding his veins. The stamina potion is working wonders. He's grown stronger in just a few days than he had in years. He reaches for his water flask, but a feeling of unease settles over him. It's been too quiet. Days have passed, and he was sure the Black Snake Syndicate would have sent someone for him by now. Suddenly, a rustle in the nearby bushes. He whips around, his senses screaming. Just as I thought, he clenches his fist, ready for a fight. Those Black Snake bastards. He lunges forward, grabbing the intruder by the throat and slamming them to the ground. But as he looks down, his eyes widen in shock. It's not a Syndicate thug. It's his younger brother, Abel, who chokes out his name. Damien immediately lets go, dropping him to the ground in surprise. Abel rubs his sore neck, remarking that Damien has gotten surprisingly strong. For a second, he thought his neck was going to snap. Damien remembers him well. The studious, serious younger brother. He stays silent, a mix of guilt and surprise on his face. He reaches out a hand to help him up, offering a quick apology, saying he didn't realize it was him. But Abel flinches away, his eyes sharp with suspicion. Damien pulls his hand back, realizing, this isn't a friendly visit. I'm not here for an apology, Abel says coldly. Abel explains that their father told him about the apology from the bar, but he also heard there was a massive fight and that many people were injured. He glares at Damien. There's no way you could have done that. Are you lying to our family now? Damien just offers a calm, unreadable smile. No, it's true, I did it, Abel explodes. He shouts that Damien can't even fight, accusing him of hiring someone to do his dirty work. He says he might fool their parents, but he's not an idiot. He lectures him, telling him not to do anything that would bring more shame to their family, asking if he has any idea how much they've already sacrificed to clean up his messes. Damien listens quietly, a hint of sadness in his eyes as he thinks of his brother. Abel. He knows his brother was always diligent, always worried about their family's honor. He gently places a hand on Abel's head, much to his brother's shock and frustration. Damien just laughs, reassuring him that nothing bad will happen. But just then, a panicked voice calls out for the young masters. It's Victor, running towards them, his face pale with fear. It's bad. It's bad news. The brothers immediately race back to the estate. They hurry down the long hall and burst through the doors of the drawing room. Inside, their parents are sitting with a guest, an arrogant-looking young man with long blonde hair who scolds Damien for his rude entrance. The man casually sips his tea. "Oh, you're here?" He explains that he was just telling the Viscount about what happened at the banquet. He apologizes for showing up unannounced, but claims his hand was forced after his own father found out. Damien's eyes narrow. He recognizes that slimy, punchable face, Erwin Lionbloom. Erwin smirks, asking if Damien remembers him. The memory flashes back. A fancy banquet hall, a voice shouting, "What did you say?" It was him, confronting Erwin. He had tried to be civil, but people were already whispering. He had accused Erwin of not only insulting him, but of dishonoring his sister. Erwin, drunk and arrogant, denied everything, but Damien had heard every word. Erwin leaned in close and sneered, "So what if I did, you pathetic loser?" And in that moment, Damien's flimsy control snapped. He knew he shouldn't have fallen for the obvious provocation. He had punched Erwin, sending him crashing to the floor. It was a single, satisfying blow. Back in the present, Erwin continues his tale. He says it was strange that someone close to becoming a knight like himself was knocked down by a single punch from Damien. He gives a sly, predatory smile. "So, what should we do about this? It's quite embarrassing, but, I've always admired Miss Louise." Their father, Paul, asks what he's getting at. Erwin gets straight to the point. "Please allow it. A marriage between myself and Louise." The entire Haxon family stares in stunned silence. Damien's blood runs cold. There he goes again. He remembers it all. Erwin pulled this exact same move in his past life, taking advantage of their family's lack of wealth and power. Erwin offers a deal. If they agree to the marriage, he'll let the insults slide, and this will all just be a simple family matter. But Paul Haxon sits up straight, his voice firm and unwavering. "We cannot do that." Erwin's friendly mask vanishes, replaced by a cold, menacing glare. Paul explains that Louise is already engaged. Erwin sneers, asking what he's supposed to do about the public insult he received. He threatens them, asking if House Haxon can truly afford to face his family's wrath. He gives them an ultimatum. Choose. Pay the price for insulting me, A.E., or choose me. Paul is trapped. He knows the Lionbloom family is one of the most powerful in the kingdom, but he can't let this famously lecherous bastard marry his precious daughter. Just as the tension is about to break, a calm voice says, "Fine." Everyone turns. It's Louise. With a steady voice and a look of quiet, painful resolve, she says, "I will accept that offer." Her family is in an uproar. Her father and brother protest, shouting that they'll find another way, that she shouldn't have to sacrifice herself for Damien's mistake. Damien just stares at his sister, his heart feeling like it's being crushed. She turns to him, forcing a gentle, reassuring smile. "I'm okay. I'll go with Sir Erwin." Damien realizes with a jolt of horror. Because of me, she is once again. Erwin can't contain his glee, a triumphant, disgusting grin spreading across his face. He stands up, praising Louise for being so wise and understanding. He tells them he'll send a formal proposal soon, and they can discuss the details then. But as he passes Damien, he stops. He leans in close, taunting him. "Damien, anything you want to say? Or should I just call you brother-in-law?" Damien's mind is screaming. This slimy bastard ruined his sister's life once, and he's about to do it again. Louise senses the rising tension and calls out his name, trying to de-escalate. Erwin just grins wider, leaning even closer. "What's that? I can't hear you." And in that instant, Damien's fist connects with his face. The punch sends Erwin flying across the room, blood spraying from his mouth. A voice in Damien's head screams at him. He shouldn't have done it. He fell for the provocation again. For his sister's sake, for his family, he should have endured it. But he stands over Erwin's unconscious body, his fist still raised. With a look of pure, unadulterated fury, he declares, "No, you asshole, you can't." For a man given a second chance, the worst nightmares aren't visions of the future, but replays of the past. In his mind, Damien relives the moment it all went wrong, a single punch that became the soundtrack to his ruin. The memory shifts. He's younger, running through the halls of his home. A maid tells him his sister, Louise, has returned with Sir Erwin. It's been so long. A pure, simple joy fills him, thinking only of seeing her again. He peeks around the corner, a wide smile on his face, ready to tell her how much he missed her. This is the memory he fights to protect his sister, happy and safe. But just as quickly, the beautiful memory shatters. His eyes snap open, filled with a raw, dawning horror as the scene dissolves into the darkness of what truly happened next. A scream rips through the silence. In the original timeline, Erwin grabbed Louise by the hair, dragging her back. He snarls at her, reminding her that he was kind enough to bring her home for a visit. His face is a mask of pure contempt, as he asks if she really thought she could leave him after being sold off by her insect-like family. Louise can only grimace in pain, completely at his mercy. Erwin throws her to the ground, his gaze possessive and chilling. "My love, Louise," he says, his voice dripping with false affection. A wicked smile spreads across his face as he leans in, promising to educate her so she'll never dream of escaping again. This is the living hell Damien allowed his sister to endure. And all of that pain, all of her suffering, fuels the power behind his fist. A sickening crack echoes through the room as Erwin is sent flying. In the doorway of his memory, Damien watches, a helpless spectator to his own failure. And his face crumples in agony. The realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. He sinks to his knees, utterly broken by the memory. It's my fault, he thinks, all of it. Because of me, Louise was taken, and that crushing guilt boils over into a pure, undiluted rage, all of it directed at one person, Erwin Leonblum. His eyes glow with a murderous light, the horrors of the past fueling his fury in the present. "You damn bastard!" a voice screams in his mind. "I'll never forgive you." Snapping back to reality, Damien stands over Erwin, his arm still raised from the punch. "Too bad, you bastard," he says. "This time, things will be different." The sound of the impact, a solid, heavy thud, rings through the drawing room. Erwin lies motionless on the floor. Everyone is frozen in absolute shock. Louise covers her mouth in horror, while Damien's parents can only stare, speechless. From outside, a voice calls out, "What was that sound?" Erwin's guards, alerted by the noise, peek inside. They rush in, their eyes wide with disbelief at the sight of their young master on the ground, with Damien standing calmly over him. "Did you just hurt our young master?" one of them shouts, and in an instant their swords are drawn and pointed directly at Damien. A low chuckle comes from the floor. Erwin slowly gets to his feet, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword. He looks at Damien, his voice a low growl. "You dare!" He pulls his blade from its sheath, his knuckles white with rage. "Ick! Hit my face not once, but twice." Damien's parents look on, their faces pale with terror. They know just how powerful the Leonblum family is. They know what this means. Erwin's face is twisted into a mask of pure hatred. He sneers. "You must really want to die, brother-in-law." His guards try to hold him back, pleading with him to calm down, but Erwin is beyond reason. He grits his teeth and snarls a single word, "Move." One of the guards, trying to be helpful, says he'll take care of this rude bastard himself. Erwin shoves his own man aside with a burst of force, sending him flying into a pillar. His fist is literally glowing with rage. He repeats himself, his voice cold and final. "I said, move." Damien's brother and sister flinch at the sheer killing intent radiating from Erwin. This is no longer a simple argument. Erwin takes a step forward, sword in hand, and asks Damien one last time, "How are you going to handle this?" It's not a question. It's a threat. Louise cries out, "No!" convinced that Erwin will never let this go. She rushes forward, begging them to stop, but Damien gently pushes her back. He looks at her with a calm, reassuring expression. "It's okay, Louise, I'll deal with this." And with a quiet intensity he tells her, "Stop sacrificing yourself. For me." He turns to face Erwin, his entire demeanor changed. He's no longer a reckless boy. He's a warrior. "Let's duel." Erwin is taken aback. "A duel?" Damien lays out the terms. "If you win, I'll do whatever you wish. But if I win, you forget any of this ever happened." Erwin scoffs at the offer. "And why should I? There's no benefit for me." He glances at Louise, adding cruelly, As I recall, Miss Louise has already accepted my proposal. Damien just smiles, a sharp, knowing grin. Why are you twisting my words? He asks, his voice laced with provocation. Are you scared you'll lose to me? The taunt lands perfectly. Erwin grits his teeth. He thinks Damien is an arrogant bastard, acting tough after one lucky punch. This is the perfect excuse to cripple him. A wicked grin spreads across Erwin's face. He'll use this duel to destroy Damien and take his sister right in front of him. Fine, he says, his voice dripping with malice. I accept your duel. The confrontation moves to the courtyard. The mood is heavy as the sun begins to set. Damien's mother asks her husband if they should stop them. But Paul can only hope for the best, saying Damien must have some kind of plan. If not, they can only pray. But Abel, his younger brother, steps in. He tells his father he's wrong. There will be no miracle. He explains that Erwin is already at the level of an official knight. Against a trained swordsman like that, his troublemaker brother doesn't stand a chance. Across the courtyard, Erwin smirks. So, shall we begin? He asks, then gestures to Damien's empty hands. But how will you face me without a sword? Damien simply replies, Don't worry about it. Then, with a confident grin, Damien reveals his weapon. He holds up a dinner fork he must have pocketed from inside. This, he declares, is more than enough to deal with you. A fork? The entire family stares in disbelief. Louise looks like she's about to faint. Even Erwin is momentarily stunned by the sheer insulting absurdity of it all. Then, Erwin throws his head back and lets out a booming laugh. The disrespect is so profound, he finds it hilarious. You must have lost your mind, he says, his smile turning vicious. He promises not to go easy, then lunges forward with incredible speed. He slashes his sword in a wide arc, aiming to end this in a single blow. But Damien, calm and collected, leans back, dodging the strike with almost lazy grace. Erwin's eyes widen in surprise. He dodged. He thought this would be over in an instant. Not wasting a second, Erwin grips his sword and channels his energy into the blade, causing it to glow with a faint red light. He unleashes his family's signature technique, the fierce, roaring lion sword. A massive wave of energy shaped like a lion's head erupts from his blade, roaring towards Damien. The attack slams into the ground where Damien was standing, tearing up the earth in a huge explosion. But when the dust settles, Damien is standing there, completely unharmed, still just holding the fork. How is he fine? Erwin stammers, his mind reeling. His guards are just as confused. What in the world is happening? In that split second, Erwin realizes with a jolt of shock that Damien didn't just get lucky. He perfectly dodged every single movement of the technique, a feat that should be impossible for an amateur. Damien allows himself a small, smug smile. Erwin is shocked, and Damien knows it's thanks to his relentless training. But more than that, he's already perfectly analyzed the Lienblum family's swordsmanship. Because, in his past life, he fought against Erwin's much more powerful older brother, Michael. Damien looks at Erwin with an almost pitying expression. Compared to Michael, Erwin is just a cheap copy. He's so much weaker. Erwin, refusing to accept it, chalks it up to luck. Let's see you dodge this, he screams, unleashing his trump card. A red aura explodes around him, the true power of a knight. The aura-clad blade scrapes against the ground, kicking up sparks as Erwin prepares a move that should be unstoppable. Damien's expression turns serious. He knows he can't dodge this one. There's only one thing to do. He'll have to use the technique of the legendary Sword Saint. A massive explosion of light and energy erupts as Erwin's attack lands. Louise and Abel watch in horror, certain that Damien couldn't have survived such a powerful assault. But as the light fades, the scene is one of pure disbelief. Damien stands there, his fork held steady, effortlessly blocking Erwin's full-powered, aura-infused sword. Erwin can only stammer, "What?" With a simple, elegant twist of his wrist, Damien uses the fork to disarm Erwin, sending his sword flying. Before Erwin can even process it, Damien unleashes a secret technique from his past life, the Countless Thunder Shadow Revelation. His body becomes a blur, moving faster than the eye can see. In a flash, he's right in front of Erwin, his eyes glowing with an ominous red light. The fork is aimed straight for his throat as Damien whispers, "Goodbye." And just like that, the duel is over. The cold metal of the fork presses against Erwin's neck, a single point of contact separating the arrogant noble from his end. This was never just about winning a duel. With his eyes glowing red, Damien is erasing a future of pain, one final, decisive move at a time. His voice is a low whisper as he says one last word, "Goodbye." The world goes silent. The fight is over. Erwin is frozen, a simple dinner fork pressed against his throat. Across the courtyard, Louise and Abel can only stare, their mouths agape, unable to process what they just saw. His parents are paralyzed with disbelief. Their son, the family troublemaker, has just defeated a noble knight with a piece of silverware. Even Erwin's own guards are too stunned to move, their master's name dying on their lips. Erwin can feel the cold metal prongs digging into his skin, drawing a single, humiliating bead of blood. He is completely at Damien's mercy. Damien yanks the fork back, and Erwin collapses to the ground, letting out a pathetic, broken whimper. He's been defeated not by a sword, but by pure, absolute humiliation. A part of Damien, the part that remembers his sister's tears, wants nothing more than to end him right here. But for his family, for the new future he's trying to build, he holds back. He looks down at the whimpering noble and declares the duel over. Erwin can only look up, his eyes wide with a mix of terror and shame. Damien reminds him of their deal, his voice leaving no room for argument, and with a voice as cold as ice, he gives him one last order: get lost. The next morning, the explosive tension from yesterday has settled into a thick, awkward silence at the breakfast table. The only sound is the clinking of silverware. Damien finishes his meal first. He thanks his mother for the food, announces he's off to train, and stands to leave without another word. He walks out, leaving the rest of his family sitting in a state of stunned silence. His mother, Marilda, finally breaks the quiet, turning to her husband. She asks if he's not going to say anything to Damien about what happened. Her husband, Paul, hesitates. He opens his mouth to speak, but the words won't come. He can see his other son, Abel, is just as lost. Abel still can't wrap his head around it. His weak, troublemaking brother suddenly becoming strong enough to defeat a knight, it's like he became a different person overnight. Paul finally makes a decision. He tells his wife to let it be, that they shouldn't press their son for answers. He trusts Damien will tell them when he's ready. Marilda looks at him, concerned, as he tells Abel to pull himself together. But inside, Paul is struggling. The truth is, he's just as curious as they are, but a deep primal instinct is screaming at him not to ask. He remembers the cold look in Damien's eyes, the chilling efficiency of his victory, and a shiver runs down his spine. He thinks to himself, he's my son, but he's so frightening. Meanwhile, Damien straps heavy sandbags to his legs, ready to begin his grueling training. But just as he's about to leave, his sister's voice stops him. "Damien!" He turns to see Louise standing there holding a training sword. She looks at him with pure relief. "Thank goodness, you're still here." She nervously starts to talk about yesterday, but Damien cuts her off, immediately assuming she's upset and starting to apologize. He bows deeply, telling her he's sorry, admitting that he acted recklessly and put her in a difficult position. He promises it will never happen again, but Louise quickly stops him, insisting that's not what she came to say at all. She gently places a hand on his shoulder, stopping his bow. She looks him straight in the eye and says two simple, heartfelt words, "Thank you." She admits she was terrified. Even though she agreed to the marriage to protect them, her heart was screaming no, rejecting that fate with every fiber of her being. For Damien, hearing this, it's everything. He finally understands what she truly wanted. She tells him that when he stepped forward, she felt both sorry for putting him in danger, but also incredibly, overwhelmingly glad. With tears of gratitude in her eyes, she gives him a bright, genuine smile and says it again. "Thank you, Damien." It hits him then. A wave of pure emotion he hasn't felt in a lifetime. A small, real smile touches his lips for the first time. He realizes the one who should be saying thank you is him. He looks at his sister, the reason he came back, and says, "Thank you for everything, sis." Louise is a little confused by his words, but Damien just says it's nothing and turns to leave. But she calls out one last time, telling him to take something with him. She holds out a sturdy, well-crafted sword. Damien recognizes it instantly. It's their father's favorite. Louise smiles and confirms that their father told her to give it to him for his training. As she hands it over, she explains that their father is terrible at expressing himself, but he loves Damien very much. She then adds the rest of his message, putting on a stern face that perfectly mimics their father's. "You're the son of a viscount, so make sure you never disgrace this family by using a fork instead of a sword again." He takes the sword, his hand closing around the familiar, solid grip. He gives it a practice swing, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. And though his father isn't there to hear it, he offers a silent, heartfelt thought. "Thank you, Father." Miles away in his study, Paul lets out a sudden, powerful sneeze. He sniffles, wondering if a draft came through, completely unaware of the gratitude his son just sent his way. Later that night, under the light of a full moon, the Haxon estate is still and quiet. But something is wrong. A sinister, dark purple energy slithers across the grounds, completely unseen. The guards on duty are tired, one letting out a big yawn, completely oblivious to the threat that has already breached their walls. The shadowy energy moves like smoke, silent and deadly, creeping towards the main house. It belongs to the necromancer, who has finally arrived to carry out his contract. The dark energy flows and pools, solidifying as it passes right through the front gate. He's inside. The shadowy form glides through the silent halls of the house, his feet making no sound. The necromancer moves with unnatural grace, a phantom in the night. His dark magic flickers, barely disturbing the flame of a lantern as he passes. He moves from room to room, checking on the sleeping family members. He finds Abel fast asleep. He finds Paul and Marilda sleeping soundly, completely vulnerable. Finally, he stops outside a particular door. He phases through it and finds his target's sister, Louise, sleeping peacefully. A cloaked figure materializes at the foot of her bed, looming over her like a vulture. The hood falls back, revealing a scarred and twisted face. His tongue licks his lips as he leers at her. Quite a beauty, isn't she? He mutters that he's here on business for the Black Snake, but finding her is an unexpected bonus. He reaches a gnarled hand out towards her. But just as he's about to touch her, he freezes, hearing a cold voice from the doorway. "Hey!" He turns. Standing in the doorway, holding the new sword from his father, is Damien. His eyes are glowing with absolute fury as he asks, "What the hell are you doing?" Damien explains that he sensed a strange energy and came to investigate, his gaze locked on the cloaked figure standing over his sister's bed. The necromancer is reeling. His sleep magic should have put everyone in this house into a deep slumber. How is this kid awake? Even worse, he didn't sense his presence at all. This shouldn't be possible. Panicked, the necromancer launches a powerful blast of dark purple energy straight at Damien. But Damien simply raises his new sword, effortlessly deflecting the blast with a sharp clang of steel. The magical energy harmlessly splashes against the wall. The necromancer is stunned. His attack was useless. He stares at Damien, demanding, "You bastard, who the hell are you?" Damien takes a step forward, sword held ready. "That's my line," he says coldly. "This is my house." The necromancer connects the dots. This must be his target, Damien Haxon. "Yeah," Damien confirms, his eyes narrow, burning with a cold fire. "Now, tell me, who are you? And what were you about to do to my sister?" The commotion finally wakes the house. Servants shout in the distance, alerted by the noise coming from Lady Louise's room. The necromancer hears them and clicks his tongue in annoyance. The servants are awake. He knows it's a bad idea to stick around. He decides to retreat, his body dissolving into a swirl of dark energy. As the necromancer becomes a cloud of shadow and flees towards the window, Damien yells, "Stop right there!" But he's too late. The shadowy form zips out the window and into the night. The dark energy quickly dissipates among the trees, vanishing from sight. Damien stands at the window, frustrated. "Did he get away?" he mutters. But then he notices a faint, shimmering trace of energy still lingering in the air. It's faint, but it's there, a trail, and Damien recognizes it instantly. That foul energy, he knows exactly what it is. The next morning, a panic breaks out in the Haxon family stables. One of the Viscount's most prized horses lies dead on the ground for no apparent reason. The stable hands are terrified, wondering how they'll explain this to their master. They argue back and forth, one insisting the horse was perfectly fine just yesterday. A calm voice cuts through their panic. "I had a bad feeling." They all jump, startled to see Damien standing right behind them. "Young master," they stammer. They start to make excuses, but Damien holds up a hand, telling them not to worry. He says he's just here to check on something. He smiles disarmingly and asks them to give him a moment alone. The stable hands, confused but relieved, quickly agree. Damien places his hand on the dead horse, just as he suspected. The trail of energy he followed last night led him right here. As he focuses, a faint purple aura rises from the horse's body. There's no doubt about it. This eerie, corrupting energy, this is dark mana, which means the intruder from last night can only be one thing: a dark mage. He glances back towards the mansion. His family is still asleep, unaware of the danger. He decides there's no need to worry them. He'll handle this himself. The faint trail of dark mana leads him away from the estate and deep into the woods. He follows it to a hidden, skull-shaped cave, the perfect, cliché hideout for a dark mage. Inside, the necromancer is busy at his workbench, surrounded by potions and magical tools, letting out a sinister little laugh. He sneers to himself about how stupid the Black Snake's boss is for giving him everything he asked for. He admits he lied about needing all the materials. In reality, he just scammed the syndicate out of extra supplies for his own twisted experiments. Still, he sighs, lamenting how far he's fallen, taking on low-level jobs like this just to get by. But he has no choice. With the church hunting him, he has to lay low for now. As he turns from his workbench, he wrinkles his nose in disgust. What a stench. He mutters about old men living cooped up by themselves, and then freezes. He is not alone. Standing at the entrance of his cave is Damien. "You are," he stammers. Damien gives him a cold smile. "The one from yesterday," the necromancer finishes, his voice filled with disbelief. The mage is stunned. "How did you find this place?" Damien's reply is simple and insulting. "I followed the stench." The necromancer realizes this opponent is far more capable than he thought. He'd heard the rumors, but now he sees Damien is no mere reckless boy. Damien confirms his thoughts. "You must be the one hired by the Black Snake." The necromancer admits, it's true, they wanted him to hurt Damien's family as much as possible. Damien just scoffs. "How pathetic. You took on a job like that, and now you're about to die for it." "What?" the necromancer spits out, enraged. He bursts out laughing, a wild, unhinged cackle. His hands crackle with dark energy as he calls Damien amusing, threatening to capture and torture him. "Sorry, but that's not happening," Damien says, gripping his sword. "I promised myself that in this life, I wouldn't kill anyone unless I absolutely had to. However, there is one exception." His face twists into a snarl, the reflection of a monstrous skull appearing on his blade. "And that exception is for filthy dark mages like you." The necromancer is shocked. "You even know that?" He concedes that Damien is no ordinary kid. Realizing he's in real trouble, the mage unleashes a flurry of dark magic, screaming for Damien to just die already. But Damien is already moving, his blade a blur as he cuts through the magical barrage. "He's fast," the necromancer thinks, barely able to track his movements. Damien closes the distance in an instant, swinging his sword in a clean, deadly arc. The blade slices right through the necromancer's torso, a direct hit. But the two halves of his body don't fall. Instead, they begin to knit back together with sickening purple energy. His body is reassembling itself. Damien recognizes the ability instantly. It's the same regeneration he used to escape last night. The necromancer smirks, remarking that Damien is pretty strong. He laughs maniacally, taunting Damien that a simple attack like that won't work on him. Damien's eyes glow red with determination. "Then I'll just cut you down until there's nothing left." Damien unleashes a storm of slashes, his sword becoming a whirlwind of steel, dicing the necromancer's form over and over again. The mage is impressed. "Not bad," he admits. "It seems the rumors about you were true, but still," Damien's expression is pure ice. "The moment you walked in here," he states, "you were already dead." The necromancer unleashes his full power. The shadows in the cave coalesce into massive, monstrous forms with gaping mouths. He reveals he's already cast curses all over the cave. For the first time, a hint of concern appears on Damien's face. This could get dangerous. A terrifying, jagged grin spreads across the necromancer's shadowy face. He reveals his true status. "You'll regret ever crossing a Yulan officer." He screams, focusing all his energy into one final, devastating curse. "Your whole body shall now rot and die." The dark purple mana swirls violently around Damien, completely engulfing him. The energy writhes and pulses, a chaotic storm of dark magic that should be dissolving flesh and bone. The necromancer lets out a triumphant, ugly laugh. "Arrogant brat," he sneers. "You just shortened your own life." His job was to cause as much damage as possible. With a greasy grin, he figures a rotting corpse certainly meets that requirement. He turns his back, already planning to go after Damien's sister. But behind him, a calm voice cuts through his thoughts. A decomposition-type curse, huh? The necromancer whips around, his eye wide with disbelief. You! The curse is literally falling apart around Damien, who stands there completely untouched as the dark energy dissolves into nothing. The necromancer screams, "How are you unaffected?" He takes a step back, panicked. "How much do you know about dark magic?" Damien just gives a non-committal shrug. Damien is just as surprised. He looks down at his hand, where a faint magical glyph is glowing. He wonders to himself, how is there still authorities left in me? His mind flashes back to his past life. He remembers his master, the Archlich Dorgo, standing before a swirling vortex of power, declaring that this was authority, the power of a god. Dorgo, a towering skeletal figure, examines the power with cold curiosity. He looks down at a broken, kneeling figure. Damien, before he became the Death Knight. "My Death Knight," Dorgo's voice echoes. Dorgo explains that while he'd given Damien the strongest body and magic, it wasn't enough. He needed Damien to be his ultimate weapon. "Therefore," Dorgo says, holding out a skeletal hand, "I shall also give you this power." A sphere of raw, purple energy crackles in his fingers. Dorgo watches, his expression unreadable as he prepares to forge his masterpiece. The power slams into Damien's body. Even the Archlich can feel the raw, untamed force of it. Damien clenches his hands, his body racked with agony, as the divine power is forcibly branded onto his very soul. The sheer force of the energy is incredible, a swirling vortex that impresses even Dorgo. Damien screams, purple energy bursting from his eyes and mouth as his body is remade. He's engulfed in a pillar of blinding light. And when it fades, Dorgo looks upon his creation, satisfied. Finally, "I have obtained it." And there he stood, no longer human, but the Death Knight, infused with the authority of a god. Back in the present, Damien stares at the glowing glyph on his hand. It all makes sense. This is the authority of greed. He thought he'd lost it when he returned to the past, but it was here all along. To test it, he gathers the ambient dark mana, forming a crackling sphere of energy. With a swift kick, he sends the sphere of dark magic flying right back at the necromancer. The mage deflects it easily, but he shakes him. He demands an answer. "Now, tell me, how did you survive my spell?" Damien just shrugs. "Well, doesn't everyone have a hidden trump card?" Damien remembers what the mage called himself, an officer of Yulin. The name is familiar from his past life, a dark magic assassination group. It's no wonder this guy was so skilled. The necromancer knows something is deeply wrong. The longer this fight goes on, the worse it gets for him. He has to end this now. He decides he has no choice. He was saving this for a run-in with the church, but he has to use it. It seems he has a trump card of his own. A simple-looking bracelet on his wrist begins to glow with an intense turquoise light. A massive wave of green energy erupts from his body, flooding the entire cave. This is his hidden reservoir of power, an artifact designed to store mana for a desperate moment. Damien feels the raw power wash over him. That's a considerable amount of dark mana. He realizes the bracelet must be a magical artifact that stores and conceals energy. The green energy coalesces into a massive, multi-eyed, spectral beast. The necromancer screams that no matter what Damien did before, there's no way he can handle this much power. "Burn and die in hellfire," he roars, unleashing the beast. The hellfire slams down, a torrent of pure destructive energy. The attack engulfs Damien completely, a swirling vortex of green flame. The necromancer grins, believing it's finally over, thinking Damien has been struck with a fire that burns for all eternity. But a calm voice cuts through the roaring flames. "You've gravely misunderstood something." The necromancer's eyes widen in horror. "The fire!" Damien explains that the authority of greed doesn't just dispel magic, and as he speaks, the green hellfire is drawn into him, swirling around his body like it's being devoured. The massive attack is sucked into Damien, leaving him standing in the center of the cave, completely unharmed. He looks at the necromancer, his own eyes glowing with power. It absorbs all dark mana, completely. The necromancer is screaming now, absolutely terrified. "An authority? How does someone like you have such a terrifying power?" Damien dismisses the question. That's none of your business. Let's just say I have better gear. But inside, Damien is seething. It pisses him off that he has to use this power, a gift from the one being in existence he hates more than anything. However, to take down the man in front of him, he has no choice. He has to use the techniques of the Death Knight. The necromancer watches in horror as Damien's sword begins to glow with a brilliant blue light, forming an aura blade, a technique that should only be possible for a swordmaster. He panics, screaming, "Wait a second, image, hi19057.jpg narrator." It's far too late for that. Damien raises the glowing blade and unleashes his ultimate attack, soul-severing slash. A massive beam of pure energy tears through the cave, slamming directly into the necromancer. He's lifted off his feet, his body caught in the overwhelming torrent of power. The attack is so powerful it vaporizes him completely, leaving nothing but dust and shattered rock in its wake. The dust settles in the destroyed cave. The necromancer lies broken on the ground, his body disintegrating from the soul-severing slash. But he's not quite dead yet. Damien stands over him, the glowing tip of his sword at the mage's throat. He offers a cold mercy. "Tell me before you die, and I'll make it painless." His body wreathed in a dark, shadowy aura, Damien asks the only question that matters. Where is the Black Snake's hideout? Sometime later, a carriage rattles across a bridge, entering the bustling merchant city of Landwork. Inside, Damien's young servant, Victor, looks up from his work. "Young master, what now?" he asks. "Why are we going back to Landwork?" Damien doesn't look up from the ominous book he's reading. He simply tells Victor that if he's going to follow him, he needs to do it quietly. Victor can only think that while his master seems refreshed, that book looks anything but. Victor finally works up the courage to ask what he's reading so intently. With a small smile, Damien holds up the book. "It's a dark magic grimoire I picked up recently," he says casually, "after killing a dark mage." Victor freezes. He may be just a servant, but even he knows that dark magic grimoires are forbidden, incredibly dangerous artifacts. He then catches a whiff of a strange, foul odor. He starts to ask about it, but the carriage comes to a sudden stop. The carriage door creaks open. "We're here," Damien announces, stepping out into a busy city street. Damien turns to Victor, holding out a heavy, stained sack. "Victor, I have a job for you." Victor, still thinking about the smell, asks if that was coming from the carriage. Damien answers his question with 3 simple words. "A person's head." Victor just stares, holding the sack, his mind going completely blank. He starts to freak out, yelling that some jokes are just too cruel. But when he peeks inside the sack, his face goes pale with horror. It wasn't a joke. He screams and throws the sack away in absolute terror. Damien just sighs, telling his hyperventilating servant to calm down before he causes a scene. "What is this?" Victor whispers. Damien tells him he'll explain later, but first, there's something he needs him to do. Damien hands him back the sack, along with the dark magic grimoire. "You must deliver these to the place I tell you," he orders, his expression deadly serious. "Only then will we avoid any trouble." Trouble? The word echoes in Victor's mind as he realizes he is in way over his head. Meanwhile, Damien arrives at his destination, a tall, imposing tower in the middle of the city, adorned with the symbol of a coiled black snake. He walks right up to the front door, where 2 massive thugs stand guard. Damien looks around with a smirk. Gangsters with a headquarters in the middle of the city. How nice. The thugs look down at him, unimpressed. "Who the hell are you, kid?" Damien looks them dead in the eye and introduces himself. "I am Damien of House Haxon." The thugs just laugh at him, mocking his formal introduction. But then one of them pauses. He looks closer. "Wait, I think this is the guy the boss warned us about." Damien crosses his arms. "So you know who I am. I have business with your boss. Move." To Damien's surprise, the thug just shrugs. "Sure, go on in." Damien is a bit taken aback. Are they actually going to let him pass? Of course not. The other thug is already pulling out a flintlock pistol, aiming it at the sky. He fires a signal flare. Damien looks up as the flare explodes, a bright red burst against the clouds. The thug with the eye patch gives him a wicked grin. "Did you really think we'd just let you walk in?" From the rooftops and alleys, dozens of syndicate members emerge, surrounding Damien completely. "What did you do?" he asks, feigning surprise. A voice calls out from the crowd. "What else? This is the welcome party our boss prepared just for you." Damien is now completely surrounded by armed thugs, all ready to kill. But Damien isn't scared. In fact, he's smiling. He looks at the mob closing in and gives them a simple promise. "You'll regret this." Meanwhile, in a much more comfortable setting, the governor of Landwork, Sebastian Baker, is enjoying a lavish feast. He raises a toast, saying that, thanks to Cedric, his days are always enjoyable. Next to him, his knight, Robert, is already drunk and calling for more wine. Across the table, the boss of the Black Snake Syndicate, Cedric Walker, smirks. He tells the governor it's an honor, and that his doors are always open to them. The governor then gets down to business, telling Cedric he's decided to let the Black Snake take over all the other syndicates' territories. He confirms it. The entire Red Light District will be under Black Snake control. Cedric feigns concern, worrying the other syndicates might protest. Governor Baker just gives a smug, sinister smile. "I can easily crush them with my authority." Cedric lays on the flattery, telling Sir Robert he wishes he could do something for him. But Robert just brushes it off, saying protecting the city is his only duty. Cedric continues to praise the knight's modesty. Robert blushes, flustered and pleased by the attention. He tells Cedric to let him know if he ever needs anything, and they all laugh and drink, cementing their corrupt alliance. Cedric thanks them both profusely, but beneath his smiling, subservient mask, his eyes are cold and full of contempt. He thinks to himself that he won't have to bow his head to these pieces of trash for much longer. Soon, the Black Snake will control this entire city. And then, he thinks with a terrifying grin, you bastards will be bowing to me. But just then, one of his subordinates bursts into the room, shouting, "Boss!" Cedric is annoyed. "What is it? Can't you see I have guests?" The subordinate apologizes and pulls his boss aside for a private word. He whispers urgently in Cedric's ear. The news makes the governor and his knight stop dead. "What? Damien Haxon?" Cedric clenches his fist, furious. He wonders what that useless dark mage is doing, but he's glad he told his men to be ready. He dismisses his subordinate's concerns. "What are you worried about? He just walked right into our trap." Outside, his men are closing in, confident in their numbers. But this is exactly what Damien wanted. A dark purple aura explodes from his body. His eyes glow with immense power. This is the end of the line for the Black Snake. Damien moves like a phantom, a blur of motion as he cuts down thug after thug. He knows he has a backup plan. Even if things don't go exactly as he planned, he thinks about Victor, on his way to the Holy Church with undeniable proof of the Black Snake's crimes. A cold, confident smile spreads across his face. "Someone owes me a favor, so don't worry. The syndicate is already doomed." A wave of pure shock washes over Cedric Walker's face, his eyes wide with a terrifying realization. Drawn by a horrible feeling, he steps onto his balcony and looks down. The square below is a scene of absolute carnage. In the middle of the wreckage stands a single figure. Cedric clutches his head, his mind reeling. How could this have happened? That kid, Damien, stands with his foot planted on a thug's head, looking up at the tower with a cold, unforgiving gaze. Cedric can't process it. Did that boy really do all of this by himself? He grabs a nearby survivor, demanding to know if the boy's name was really Damien Haxon. The terrified man can only stammer that it was. "Damn it," Cedric curses. The rumors called him a good-for-nothing, the shame of the Haxon family. He never imagined that boy was this powerful. A chilling thought hits him. If Damien is here, then the dark mage he sent to the Viscount's estate must have already failed. This is bad. This is very, very bad. He spins around and flees back into his tower, screaming for his men to get him help. But as he runs, 3 figures on a nearby rooftop take aim with a strange, cannon-like magical device, locking onto Damien below. These are Cedric's elite mercenaries. One of them shouts down at Damien, "You monster! Let's see you block this!" The weapon glows with a blistering heat before unleashing a massive, roaring fireball. The inferno streaks through the air, aimed directly at the lone figure in the square. The mercenary laughs, a wild, crazed sound. "You idiot! Are you going to stop our flames with a sword?" A blinding wave of fire engulfs the entire battlefield. But Damien doesn't flinch. He unleashes his secret technique, Countless Thunder Shadow Revelation. His blade becomes a silver blur, not blocking the fire, but slicing straight through it to strike the magical core. The orb detonates in a massive explosion, wiping out the mercenaries on the rooftop in their own blast. Damien stands completely unharmed amidst the smoldering wreckage, casually brushing the dust from his shoulder. "I guess I'm about done here," he murmurs. Now, it's time to find out who the boss of Black Snake really is. But before he can move, a powerful presence makes him freeze. A colossal figure crashes down from above, shattering the stone street with the sheer force of his landing. Damien leaps back just as the dust settles, revealing a mountain of a man wielding an even bigger axe. The man's aura is immense, a crushing pressure that prickles Damien's skin. "This is no ordinary foe," a deep voice rings out. "I was wondering what kind of bastard was causing all this trouble." The warrior sizes Damien up, a smirk on his face. He scoffs, dismissing Damien as just another young punk with more confidence than sense. A powerful blue aura flares to life around him. Beyond the warrior, Damien spots the city's public order soldiers forming a blockade, which means the leadership of this city is now involved. From a safe distance, a man in fine clothes roars, "How dare you cause such chaos in the middle of the city?" It's the governor, Sebastian Baker, flanked by a smug-looking Cedric. The governor points an accusing finger, declaring that Damien will be punished. Damien just smirks back. "Oh, what a grand guest." His casual tone infuriates the governor. Damien tilts his head. "You're going to punish me? For what?" The governor sputters, enraged by his audacity. The governor begins to spin a tale about how Damien viciously attacked a kind businessman and slaughtered dozens of his innocent employees. The lie is so blatant, Damien almost laughs. Cedric smirks, feeling safe now. No matter how strong Damien is, he can't touch someone being protected by the governor himself. Damien's eyes finally lock onto Cedric. "So you're the boss of Black Snake. I finally found you." He cracks his knuckles. "Come here. Let's start with a solid punch." He knew the syndicate had connections, but this is something else entirely. He looks at the governor with open mockery. "You call a piece of garbage like him a kind businessman? Your judgment is pathetic." The governor, red-faced, demands that he shut up and beg for forgiveness. But Damien is unmoved, calmly stating that he has no reason to beg when he's committed no crime. That's the last straw. The governor turns to his champion. "Sir Robert!" The massive knight takes a heavy step forward, his presence alone a threat. He looms over Damien, a true giant of a man. "I am Robert, the city's guardian knight," he announces, his voice a low growl. "Drop your weapon and surrender." Damien just grins. The guardian knight himself. This is getting interesting. Robert notes the complete lack of fear in Damien's eyes. "Are you bold or just stupid?" Damien's answer is simple and sharp. "I'm confident." Robert returns his grin, a cruel, mocking expression. "Turns out you're just a fool," he roars, bringing his axe down in a devastating strike that shatters the very ground beneath them. Damien barely dodges, gritting his teeth. He knows this fight won't be easy. At his current level, Robert is a serious threat. But he doesn't need to win. He just needs to hold on. He braces himself for the next attack, buying time until the moment is right. The two clash in a furious exchange of blows. Robert's raw power is immense, forcing Damien to rely on pure skill just to parry and defend. For a man his size, Robert is incredibly fast. His axe becomes a blur of motion, relentlessly pushing Damien back. Robert leaps into the air, bringing his axe down in a massive overhead cleave. Damien dives aside just as the weapon smashes into the ground, sending spiderwebs of cracks through the stone. Watching from the side, Cedric's expression is a mix of rage and disbelief. He can't believe this kid is holding his own against the city's knight. Suddenly, Robert spots a new figure appearing behind Damien. "You had an associate?" he yells. "Who are you? Identify yourself." A figure cloaked in the white robes of the Holy Church steps forward. In a single, fluid motion, she throws back her hood, revealing a beautiful woman with short, white hair, her eyes glowing with holy light. Robert's jaw goes slack. He can't believe his eyes. That pristine armor, that holy aura, impossible, he breathes. Is that a paladin? Damien glances over his shoulder, a small sigh of relief escaping his lips. "You're late." From behind the paladin, his loyal servant Victor appears, flanked by two more officials from the church. Victor runs toward him, waving his arms in excitement and shouting, "I have arrived!" As the sun begins to set on the city of Landwork, the world is about to end for the Black Snake Syndicate and their corrupt allies. Cedric stares, his blood running cold. A paladin. Here, that can only mean one thing: the Holy Church is involved, and for a man like him, that's a death sentence. A cold sweat drips down his back as his mind races. Do they know? Do they already know about his deal with the Dark Mage? Victor rushes to Damien's side, only to have his cheeks promptly squished. "Are you all right, my lord?" he asks. Damien looks annoyed. "No, I'm not. You took forever. Do you want to be fired?" As Victor begins to panic, Damien lets him go and turns his attention to the paladin. At least the boy got the job done. Victor puffs out his chest, cheeks still red with pride. "Of course, I, Victor, can always handle your orders." The scene flashes back to a few hours earlier. Victor arrives panting before a massive, imposing cathedral, a branch of the Holy Church of Benagor. Inside, figures are kneeling in quiet prayer before a grand, sun-drenched altar. One of them, a young woman dressed as a nun, senses a presence and turns her head. Victor stands at the entrance, clutching the grimoire and a heavy sack, trying to catch his breath as he confirms he's in the right place. The nun approaches him, her voice gentle. "Yes? What is it?" Victor explains that his lord sent him with urgent evidence. As he holds out the items, a dark, sinister energy begins to seep from them, tainting the sacred air. The nun's eyes widen. She recognizes that corrupting presence instantly. This is proof of a contract with a dark mage. "Could I see that?" she asks, her voice now tight with urgency. Victor nervously hands her the grimoire. She feels it the moment she touches the book. It's faint, she thinks, but this energy, it's unmistakably dark magic. And then she sees the symbol carved into the cover. Her eyes snap wide with pure, undiluted shock. Without a word, she reaches for the sack. She unties the knot and pulls out the severed head of the necromancer. Victor lets out a terrified squeak. But the nun's eyes are glowing with a furious, holy light. She recognizes this face. "I finally found him," she whispers, her voice filled with venom. "One of the leaders of Yulan, Ajito." In an instant, her entire demeanor changes. The gentle nun vanishes, replaced by a hardened warrior of God. Her simple habit dissolves away, replaced by a suit of brilliant paladin armor. "Where," she demands, her voice ringing with power, "is the one who sent you?" Back in the present, the paladin, Saintess Stella, looks at Damien with a surprisingly gentle expression. "Are you Damien Haxon?" Damien nods as she approaches. She tells him the evidence has been received, and the church will handle everything from here. He simply agrees. The governor and Cedric immediately begin bowing, assuring her they won't interfere and that she should do as she pleases. Stella gives Damien a small, grateful smile and a quiet, "Thank you." Damien watches her, a faint smile on his own face. Everything is going exactly according to plan. The Holy Church. They are the devout servants of God, living lives of prayer and service. To the common people, they are a symbol of endless mercy and charity. But when faced with heretics and demons, they become something else entirely. Fanatics who would gladly burn their own souls just to watch their enemies turn to ash. And leading the charge for this zealous church are the paladins. And right now, Damien thinks to himself, those fanatics are on my side. Stella steps forward, her voice carrying across the square. She announces that the church has received a report of someone in Landwork making contact with a wanted dark mage. The townspeople whisper among themselves, wondering who would be so foolish as to deal with such filth. Then Stella makes a shocking declaration. Until they find the culprits, the church is taking control of the city. The governor is outraged, sputtering that Landwork is a self-governing territory. Stella shuts him down with a cold stare. She reminds Viceroy Sebastian that hunting heretics is God's will, and the church's authority overrules any kingdom's laws. She leans in, her eyes glowing with menace, and declares that he and his knight are now prime suspects. Robert and the governor are stunned. "What do you mean?" Robert yells. "Why would we work with a dark mage?" A single armored finger points directly at Cedric Walker. Stella's voice is like ice. Just protecting a man like that is suspicious enough. The governor spins on Cedric, demanding to know if it's true. Cedric denies it frantically, calling the accusation outrageous. "You deny it, even with the evidence right here?" Stella says, completely unimpressed. She holds up the grimoire. She explains that it's a detailed ledger, containing records of everything Cedric bought from the Dark Mage, where and for what purpose. Every last incriminating detail. Cedric's face twists in pure rage. He screams internally, "That damned dark mage, why would you write that down?" He continues to plead his innocence, but Stella cuts him off. They'll sort out the truth during the investigation. With a sharp, cold look, she gives the order, "Take him." Church officials seize Cedric and the governor, who scream and struggle, yelling for them to get their hands off. The governor is dragged away, kicking and screaming about his status. Damien watches it all unfold. The governor finally understands. "That bastard," he thinks, "he planned this all along." Panic sets in. He can't be taken by these fanatics. There's no telling what they'll do to him. He turns to his last hope, screaming for Sir Robert, warning him not to surrender because the church is zealous enough to frame them all. But Robert is already being led away. His hands bound, his head is hung low in silent defeat. He knows it's over. He has no other choice. Or does he? Suddenly, he breaks free, his body erupting with power. He knows being taken away is a death sentence. "I'll kill you all and escape," he roars, swinging his massive axe at the most valuable target he can see, Saint Estella. Cedric watches with a twisted grin, hoping for chaos. But Damien just shakes his head. What a foolish mistake. Before the axe even gets close, a dark-gloved hand catches the blade mid-swing. It's Damien. How foolish. With a surge of his own power, Damien shatters the axe head with a single punch, sending the knight staggering back. Cedric's jaw drops. Damien gives Robert a chilling, knowing smile. His fist begins to glow with a brilliant blue light, an aura almost identical to the paladin's. Those who disobey the will of God, whoever they may be, image. Aquenpre364.jp. He slams his glowing fist deep into Robert's stomach, the impact echoing like a thunderclap. Robert collapses. Before he even hits the ground, Stella is there, her own fist glowing with righteous fury. "I will be punished," she finishes, delivering the final blow that knocks him out cold. The last pillar of Landwork's corrupt regime has finally fallen. On the ground below, Cedric Walker, the once feared boss of the Black Snake Syndicate, kneels with his hands bound, completely powerless. As the guards drag him away, Cedric thrashes and screams, hurling insults and demanding they let him go. But his threats are empty now, drowned out by the jeers of the crowd. The onlookers murmur among themselves, surprised. They'd heard stories of a terrifying underworld boss, but all they see is an ordinary, overweight man. Cedric's face contorts with rage and humiliation. He can't believe it. A single kid, a nobody, brought his entire empire crashing down. Just then, Agnes approaches Damien, thanking him for his help. Damien watches her, his face calm, but his mind is racing. He knew she was strong, but this confirms it. From the sheer amount of sacred power pouring from her, he makes an educated guess. She's no ordinary paladin. She must be the apprentice of the Azure Flame. The Azure Flame Brigandine, one of the 5 great saints and the most powerful warrior in the entire Holy Church, a name Damien remembers well from his past life. The Azure Flame was a legend, famous for hunting down countless heretics. If Agnes is his apprentice, her power is the real deal. Damien Haxon, her voice snaps him from his thoughts. Beside him, his servant Victor looks completely overwhelmed by the situation. Agnes walks towards them, explaining how grateful she is for his help in taking down an officer of the dark magic organization, Yulan. Damien, playing his part, humbly replies that he only did what anyone would have. She looks at him with sharp, perceptive eyes. She tells him that because of his help, the church will overlook his own transgressions and press no charges. Damien puts on a slightly confused smile, pretending not to understand, but he knows exactly what she's talking about. Agnes calls his bluff. "Didn't you summon us specifically to cover up your own attack on the Black Snake Syndicate?" Damien is stunned for a fraction of a second. This woman is sharp. She saw right through him. Realizing he's caught, Damien switches tactics. He bows deeply, apologizing, and explains that the Dark Mage didn't just trespass. He tried to harm his family. The word families makes Agnes pause. Her expression softens slightly. As a woman of faith, the need to protect one's loved ones is a cause she can understand. She tells him that, under the circumstances, she can no longer hold him accountable. Damien files that away. She's more flexible than her fanatical reputation suggests. Agnes continues, stating the bounty on the necromancer's head will be paid out soon. Damien feigns surprise, asking just how much the bounty was. The amount is staggering. 1,000 gold. A heavenly light seems to radiate from the mountain of shimmering gold coins. Victor gasps. That's enough to buy a small castle, a life-changing fortune. But Damien has other plans. Money is temporary. Power is what he needs. He asks if he can receive something other than gold. Victor nearly faints. His master is turning down a fortune. Agnes looks intrigued. She agrees, asking what he wants instead. Damien looks her straight in the eye. I want one of the mana cultivation techniques held by the Holy Church. Now it's Agnes's turn to be confused. He was strong enough to wipe out the black snake on his own. Why would he need a cultivation technique? Damien's expression turns deadly serious. He's about to weave a story part truth, part calculated lie. He explains that after fighting the Dark Mage, he realized something. He was lucky to win, relying only on the raw, untamed power of his authority. His eyes glow faintly. To defeat the far greater enemies he knows are coming, he remembers the apocalyptic war, the demon legions, and the terrifying power of the Archlich Dorgo. To even stand a chance against them, he tells her he needs the formal training of the knights to build a proper foundation for his power. He needs a technique far more advanced than anything he's ever known. He admits he's only ever learned basic-level techniques. Agnes is floored. She can't believe he's this strong with just the basics. She can already sense a considerable aura flowing through his body. Her mind races. If he's telling the truth, his talent is beyond extraordinary. It's almost unheard of. She puts a hand to her chin, connecting the dots. Incredible talent, and the cold resolve to cut down a heretic without hesitation. An idea begins to form. A sly smile spreads across her face. If that's the case, she says, I might have a better alternative for you. Are you interested? Damien looks up, curious. A better alternative? Agnes leans in, her expression bright and eager. With a brilliant holy light shining behind her, she extends a hand. Are you interested in becoming a paladin of the Holy Church? Damien just stares back, his face a complete blank. A long, awkward silence hangs in the air. His response is blunt. I'm not interested. The shock on Agnes's face is so profound, the holy aura around her flickers out completely. Victor whispers that Damien just turned down someone incredibly powerful, but Damien quietly tells him to shut up. Agnes, recovering, demands to know why not. She passionately explains it's the greatest honor from God, a chance to punish evil in his name. As her eyes glow, Victor yelps, feeling a sudden chill from his master's aura. Agnes presses on, asking if he has any idea how difficult it is to get that position. But Damien is unmoved. Sorry, he thinks, but I've never had an ounce of religious faith in my entire life, and he has absolutely no interest in being the church's dog. But he can't say that. Time to improvise. He thoughtfully brings a hand to his chin, pretending to give it serious thought. He puts a hand to his chest and declares with false humility that he isn't yet worthy of receiving God's love. Victor gives him a bewildered look from the side. Damien launches into a full performance, striking a pose as if receiving a divine revelation. He claims he wants to travel the world as a humble devotee, following the traces of the divine. Victor wonders if anyone could possibly fall for this. But Agnes is completely captivated, her hood falling back as she listens intently. She clasps her hands together, her eyes sparkling. Your words are so holy, she exclaims. I feel my ears have been opened anew. She grabs his hands, completely buying his act. Damien is shocked. It actually worked. Agnes agrees to his original request for the mana technique. But, she adds, if he ever changes his mind, the church will always welcome him. Damien just smiles politely. That's never going to happen. Realizing she never introduced herself properly, she tells him her name is Agnes, first apprentice of the Azure Flame. Damien isn't surprised, politely saying it's an honor. With their business concluded, Damien asks if he can now finish his own. Agnes gives him a confused look, but tells him to go ahead. Damien turns and walks directly toward the captured Cedric Walker, who looks up at him with a scowl. Without a word, Damien grabs the man by his hair and lifts him up. Cedric starts cursing, but he's cut off mid-insult. A heavy thud echoes as Damien slams his fist into Cedric's gut. The man doubles over. Damien casually remarks that his belly is so fat, it's like punching a cushion. He doesn't stop. A flurry of brutal punches follows, beating Cedric into a bloody mess, venting all his pent-up frustration. He lets out a quiet sigh. Placing a hand over his chest where a faint blue light glows, he looks down at Cedric's unconscious body with a satisfied smile. "There," he says. "I feel better now." Victor cautiously approaches. Is it really over now?" Damien turns to him with a gentle, disarming smile. "Yeah." He pauses for a beat, then adds a single word that hangs in the air. "Probably." The scene shifts to the grand, opulent estate of the Leon Bloom family. The doors burst open as Marquis Holland Leon Bloom storms in, his face a mask of pure fury as he bellows for his son. "Erwin." He finds Erwin's room. The boy is just a lump under the covers, trembling, while a nervous butler stands by, helpless. Erwin peeks out from the blanket, his face pale with fear. "Father?" The Marquis strides towards the bed, his heavy footsteps thudding against the floor. He rips his son out from under the covers, demanding to know what happened. Erwin starts crying, claiming that bastard tried to kill him. He tells his father Damien held a knife, no, a fork, to his throat. Seeing his once arrogant son so terrified fills the Marquis with a burning rage. "Shh! 14071. His face twists in fury. "What in the world happened?" he roars. "Tell me everything." "Who dared to do this to you?" One of Erwin's knights steps forward grimly. The Marquis glares at him. "Speak now!" The knight reveals the name. It was Damien of House Haxon. A nearby vase shatters as the Marquis's aura explodes. He can't believe it. That lowly Haxon dared to lay a hand on my son? He assumes Damien must have used some kind of dirty trick. His voice drops to a low, dangerous snarl, his teeth clenched. "Send men to the Haxon estate at once." His eyes glow with a menacing red light, the image of a roaring beast materializing behind him. His final order is cold and brutal. "Drag that boy here like a dog." A moment of peace can be a fragile thing, especially when you've invited an inquisition into your home. The sun shines brightly over the Haxon estate, but a formal, heavy voice cuts through the quiet. Standing at the doorway is a woman with striking white hair, dressed in the armor of a paladin, flanked by two robed figures. "I am Agnes, a paladin affiliated with the church," she says, her simple introduction carrying the weight of an entire institution. Damien's parents are clearly flustered. His mother clutches her chest, pale with worry, while his father stammers out a welcome. They are minor nobles, completely unprepared for a high-ranking paladin on their doorstep. Viscount Haxon shoots a frustrated glance towards his son. He's seething. He can't believe Damien would not only cause trouble but also bring a church fanatic right into their house. Trying to play the gracious host, the Viscount explains that Damien informed them she'd be staying. He apologizes for their humble home, but Agnes simply offers a bag of coins, asking them to make her feel welcome. Later, Agnes finds Damien in the main hall, thanking him again for allowing her team to operate here. Leaning casually against his sword, Damien gives a simple, non-committal reply, waiting for her to get to the real point. For just a second, a glint of almost starstruck interest shines in Agnes's eye. This isn't just a routine investigation for her. Damien sighs internally. He knew she had another request, but he didn't expect her to follow him all the way home to ask it. Her persistence is becoming a problem. Agnes gets straight to it, saying there's something else she'd like to ask. Damien's expression remains neutral as he waits. Her eyes light up with a zealous fire as she leans forward. "My question is about you," she says, and spreading the gospel. She's not just a paladin, she's a recruiter looking for her next star player. Damien's parents, overhearing from a distance, freeze, completely lost. His mother whispers, wondering what Agnes could possibly want with their son. His father, misreading the situation entirely, mutters that it's probably not what she thinks. Changing the subject for now, Agnes hands Damien two leather-bound books, the mana cultivation manuals he requested from the church's own library. Damien looks down at the books, confused. He asks why she brought two. Agnes explains. One is a sword technique, feeling it was only right to give him a matching style. He doesn't really need sword techniques, he thinks, but there's no harm in having them. The titles glow in his mind, Destructive Sword Technique and Destructive Energy Technique. He's never heard of them, in this life or the last. Agnes admits getting them wasn't easy, emphasizing how many strings she had to pull within the church. Damien clenches his jaw. She's trying to make him feel indebted. She continues, saying she had to use her master's authority and that her master declared Damien was exactly the kind of chosen one the church needs. And with that, she makes her move. She takes his hand, her gaze intense and unwavering. So allow me to ask once again, she pleads. Please, reconsider becoming a paladin. Damien smoothly but firmly pulls his hand away. The rejection is silent but absolute. Her face falls, a flicker of genuine disappointment in her eyes. I'm sorry, he says, his tone leaving no room for argument. She takes a breath, collecting herself. After a short pause, she simply says, I understand. A slight smile returns as she backs down gracefully, telling him to find her if he ever changes his mind. As she walks away, Damien watches her, his eyes shadowed. He knew it. The woman is a fanatic, he thinks. Her obsession with recruiting him is unsettling. He's glad to have refused her again, but he knows this isn't over. Meanwhile, in a nearby makeshift base, Agnes's subordinates are discussing that very same issue. One of them turns to the other. Hey, he starts. What is it? His partner replies, busy with his research. Don't you find this a bit suspicious? He asks. His colleague looks up, confused. He explains that Agito, the necromancer Damien killed, wasn't some low-level mage. He was a high-ranking member of Yulan who had escaped the church multiple times. His partner agrees. Agito was a curse specialist, weaker in a direct fight, but it still doesn't make sense. How could a powerful dark mage die at the hands of some kid from the countryside? The other man sighs, admitting he has the same doubts. But their hands are tied. You don't question Lady Agnes's judgment. Still, he insists, wondering if they should raise it as a concern. Before he can finish, a voice cuts through the darkness. You can trust Damien Haxon. They both jump as Agnes steps from the shadows. I understand your doubts, she says calmly. However, he did not lie. One of them stammers, Still, I just can't understand how he killed Agito. Agnes looks at them as if they're slow. We already heard how he did it. The two men stare back, completely lost. A flashback shows Damien's cocky explanation. With a sly grin, he'd told them, I just dodged and cut off his head. At the time, they dismissed it as an arrogant lie. One of the subordinates looks at her in disbelief. Are you saying he really just dodged and killed him? Agnes closes her eyes, admitting she had doubts herself when she first saw Agito's severed head. So instead of intervening in the fight with the Black Snake, she stayed back and watched. She recounts what she saw Damien fighting dozens of men alone without a single scratch. But that wasn't the most shocking part. The scene flashes back to Damien, his sword wreathed in a fiery orange aura. He moved like a blur, a whirlwind of destruction cutting through his enemies. He deflected a fireball, Agnes explains. A magic spell. Her subordinate's jaws drop. What? Is that even possible? It is, Agnes confirms, a hint of awe in her voice. She'd heard that those who reach the level of swordmaster can block any attack, even magic. The subordinate's mind reels. Then could Damien Haxon be? Agnes cuts him off. He might not be a swordmaster, but it's clear he's an extraordinary warrior. She reveals her true motive. While she's here to hunt Yulan, she secretly wanted to bring Damien back to meet her master, believing he could be a great asset to the church. Image CH1-25046. She turns away, her orders firm. So set aside your doubts and focus on the investigation. Her subordinates bow. We understand. The matter is settled. But as they return to work, a more immediate threat is on the move. The rhythmic beat of horse hooves pounds against the dusty road. A group of knights in heavy armor rides hard, the proud crest of House Lionbloom flying above them. An apprentice knight named Olpus lets out a triumphant shout, Looks like we're finally here! Another apprentice, Lavender, wrinkles his nose. What's that awful smell? Opus just scoffs that it's cow dung, and the countryside bumpkin had better get used to it. Their chatter is cut short by a single sharp command. Quiet. Their leader is Garrick, a knight of the Lionbloom family, his cruel face set with pure contempt for his surroundings. He looks ahead at the Haxon estate. Is that the Haxon estate? He asks, his voice dripping with disdain. Olpus confirms it is. Garrick's eyes narrow. What mission did the Marquis give us again? Olpus answers sharply. We are to arrest Damien Haxon. A cruel sneer spreads across Garrick's face. Catching trash like Damien will be easy, he scoffs, but it won't be enough to make up for the humiliation their young master suffered. They aren't just here for an arrest, they're here for revenge. As they ride on, they spot an old man walking with a cane on the side of the road. The knights ride past the hobbling man, who is completely unaware of the danger. Hey, old man, Garrick calls out, his voice sharp and demanding. The old man stops, startled. He turns, confused, as the knights loom over him, their horses' eyes glowing. "Who are you?" he asks. One of the knights leans down. "Are you a resident of Viscount Haxon's estate?" The old man nods nervously, but before he can finish, Garrick's arm flashes out. The strike is swift and merciless. Garrick's hand connects with the old man's face. How dare a mere resident not bow after seeing House Lionbloom's crest? The old man is sent sprawling. "It's a grave offense," Garrick declares, finding any excuse to inflict pain. One of the apprentices points out the man was blind, but Garrick doesn't care. He calls out to his two subordinates. They immediately snap to attention. "Sir, yes, sir." A twisted, sadistic grin spreads across Garrick's face. "I've got a great idea," he says, a chilling promise of violence in his tone. He lays out his plan. When they arrive, they'll drag out that bastard Damien Haxon. We see young Victor, looking out from the estate, his eyes wide with a dawning sense of dread. Image H170071, Garrick's voice echoes over an image of pure terror. And then we'll eliminate whatever and whoever is in our sights. The knights charge forward. This isn't an arrest. It's an extermination. While a storm of angry knights brews on the horizon, another is quietly finishing its work. By a rocky stream, Agnes and her subordinates wrap up their investigation of the necromancer's collapsed hideout. One of her men reports that the damage was too severe to find much. But Agnes isn't concerned, simply praising them for their hard work with a reassuring smile. Suddenly, one of the men stops, his eyes wide. "Huh?" That's not far off. Damien sits on a rock, completely still. But he's not just resting. A powerful, swirling aura of blue mana wraps around him, pulsing with an energy so intense it's almost visible. The raw power is palpable, pulling stray leaves from the air and drawing them into its vortex. The mana flows into Damien as he absorbs it with a deep, steady breath. He isn't just cultivating, he's dominating the very atmosphere around him. His audience is speechless. One of them can only stammer, "My gosh, what is that?" Agnes herself is stunned. She can't comprehend what she's witnessing. She realizes he's using the destructive energy technique she just gave him. An advanced method that lets the user absorb surrounding mana. But to master it in just a few hours? To reach a level that should take years of practice? It's supposed to be impossible. Damien lets out a final, controlled breath, the swirling energy settling back into his body as if it were never there. Agnes and her team can only stare, her subordinates looking like they've just seen a god. As Damien walks towards them, Agnes approaches, a little flustered. "Have you finished investigating?" he asks coolly. She notes that he seems to have made some progress with the manual. Damien just smiles slightly. "Just a little," he says, his modesty only making the feat more terrifying. He thinks to himself that the cultivation method is a different story, extremely useful. He understands now. The technique gathers mana far faster than other methods, a perfect fit for his power set. He and Agnes stand in a slightly awkward silence, thick with her unspoken questions and his indifference. Agnes breaks the silence, suggesting they return for dinner. But in that split second, Damien's entire demeanor shifts. His eyes snap wide. That bloodlust, he knows it all too well. His expression hardens. "Vermin have arrived," he says, his voice dropping an octave. Agnes looks at him, confused. "I have urgent business," he states, his eyes glowing with a faint, dangerous light. "Lady Agnes, please go back at your own pace." Before she can process his words, he's gone, blurring across the field in a burst of speed that kicks up a cloud of dust. "Wow," Agnes whispers, watching his retreating form. "He's incredibly fast." To move that quickly with so little mana, she thinks, his control must be precise beyond belief. A question burns in her mind. Just how far do that man's limits go? Those limits are about to be tested. Back at the Haxon estate, the Lionbloom knights are savagely beating Victor, who gasps in pain with each blow. The apprentice knight, Lavender, stands over him with a smug, disgusting grin, enjoying himself. "You filthy bastard," he screams. "Bring Damien Haxon here now." But even through the pain, Victor's loyalty doesn't break. He screams back, shielding his head. "No! You're trying to hurt him!" His shouts finally attract attention. Damien's father comes running from the mansion, a terrified maid trailing behind him. A knight blocks his path, shouting, "Stop at once!" He sneers at Damien's father. "You must be Viscount Haxon." But the Viscount only has eyes for his servant, rushing to Victor's side and cradling his beaten head. "Victor, are you all right?" Kneeling on the ground, his voice shakes with fury as he glares up at the knights. What is the meaning of this? How can knights assault a civilian? Garrick, still on his horse, looks down with contempt. Compared to what your estate did to House Lionbloom, he says coldly, this is nothing. His eyes glow red beneath his helmet as he delivers the demand. Viscount Paul Haxon, Marquis Leon Bloom, demands your son. The Viscount clenches his fist. He expected retaliation, but this is sheer barbarity. Garrick offers a cruel smile, promising their land will be spared if they hand Damien over quietly. But the Viscount knows it's a lie. He can see it in their eyes. He grits his teeth, a fire we've never seen before igniting in his eyes. He makes his decision. I will. His voice roars across the courtyard, filled with the strength of a father protecting his child. Never hand my son over. Garrick asks if he'll regret that. The Viscount's answer is unwavering. Of course not. Garrick turns away, his tone flat and final. Then that leaves us no choice. He raises his sword, his voice booming with a chilling command. Until that bastard Damien comes out, destroy everything. The Viscount screams in helpless fury. You bastards! Stop this at once! But just as the knights charge, a figure appears out of nowhere, shrouded in a dark, oppressive aura. They freeze. Garrick stares, baffled. When did he appear? Damien stands before them, radiating a cold, quiet menace. One of the knights stammers, "Who the hell are you?" Suddenly, an immense pressure crashes down on them, an invisible weight that paralyzes them where they stand. What's going on? The thought screams through their minds. I can't move. They are completely frozen as Damien calmly walks past them. The pressure vanishes. Damien is already by his father's side. Father, are you all right? His dad confirms he is, his worried eyes on the unconscious servant. Damien looks down at Victor's bruised face, and his own expression turns to ice. He turns back to the knights, his voice laced with a chilling calm. You guys must have heard you're lucky a lot, right? He explains that if Victor hadn't been born so sturdy, he would have died. And if he had, Damien says, his voice dropping to a whisper, I might have beaten all three of you to death right here. Garrick finally realizes who this is. So you're Damien, huh? He sneers, thinking Damien got lucky with Erwin. Feeling cocky because you beat that noble with some petty trick? Damien just meets his gaze with a mocking smirk. Petty trick? Garrick has had enough. What are you waiting for? He roars. Crush his legs and make him kneel. The two apprentices charge. Damien lets out a quiet sigh. Screw it. Whatever. He raises one hand and effortlessly blocks Lavender's sword, metal screeching against his palm. A predatory smile touches his lips. This is perfect. He's been wanting to try out his new technique. Channeling the destructive energy into the knight's arm, he unleashes it. The knight lets out a blood-curdling scream. How convenient, Damien thinks, that some perfect test subjects showed up on their own. As Lavender is thrown back, his partner Ulpus shouts his name. But before he can react, Damien is already on him. A single brutal punch, wreathed in that same destructive energy, sends Ulpus flying. Damien's thought is cold. I'll use it to my heart's content. Garrick watches from his horse, his smug confidence shattering as both his men are taken down in seconds. But Damien's attention is already elsewhere. From the ground, Victor weakly calls out, Young master? Damien turns, all his focus now on his loyal servant. Victor, are you all right? The beaten young man trembles as he raises a hand to his face. A small, proud smile spreads across his bruised face as he gives Damien a determined thumbs up. Damien is genuinely taken aback. Huh? Then, a rare, almost imperceptible smile touches his own lips. Not a smirk, but something softer. Seriously, he thinks, a flicker of genuine amusement in his eyes. You really are quite interesting. The apprentices are down, but the real fight is just beginning. When a proud knight faces power he can't possibly understand, that pride can curdle into pure delusion. Garrick takes a step forward, his mind reeling. He looks from his defeated men to Damien, completely confused. The reports said Damien was a good-for-nothing. This doesn't make any sense. He glares at Damien, his pride refusing to accept reality. How could a country rascal like this possess such skill? Damien stands over his father and servant, a silent guardian. He scoffs at the knight's confusion. You don't need to know, he says, dismissing him entirely. A wild look enters Garrick's eyes as a desperate thought begins to form. Is he? And then, a moment of twisted epiphany. I see, he says, looking to the sky. I get it now. All the puzzle pieces fit. He points a trembling, armored finger at Damien. You aren't Damien Haxon, he bellows, his accusation echoing across the courtyard. Damien and his father just stare, baffled. The Viscount looks from his son to the knight, utterly lost. Damien asks flatly, "What are you talking about? Don't lie to me!" Garrick roars, now fully committed to his paranoid fantasy. He launches into a wild conspiracy, claiming this is all a trap set by a rival family to ruin the Leon Bloom name, and that this warrior is just an imposter. Damien just sighs, a look of profound disappointment on his face. This bastard, he's even more stupid than he thought. The sheer idiocy of it all is almost unbelievable. Fueled by his delusion, Garrick lets out a war cry and prepares to charge. His armored fingers twitch with anticipation. Meanwhile, one of the defeated apprentices, Lavender, peeks an eye open. What should I do? He thinks. The answer is obvious. He's staying right where he is. Victor, supported by the Viscount, calls out with newfound faith, "Win, my lord." Garrick clenches his fist, channeling his energy. He lunges forward, kicking up a cloud of dust, his massive sword aimed right at Damien. This imposter seems skilled, he thinks, but his luck has run out. As soon as he gets within range, he'll close the distance in the blink of an eye, and split him in half. The heavy blade comes whistling down, a strike meant to end the fight in a single blow. But Damien just grins, a feral, predatory smile. With a flick of his wrist, he meets the massive sword with his own. A loud clang rings out. As expected of Leon Bloom, he thinks, they sent a proper knight this time. The force of the block sends a shockwave through the air, but Damien stands his ground, completely unfazed. Garrick's eyes are wide with shock. No way. He parried my thrust. Dismissing it as a fluke, he unleashes a storm of furious red slashes. But to Damien, it's all in slow motion. "You're too slow," he says, his voice cutting through the knight's rage. Garrick freezes, his eyes bloodshot with fury. Damien's expression turns hard. "My turn." In a flash, he's inside Garrick's guard, his eyes glowing, a vicious strike to the side, a blow to the head, another to the gut. The attacks are too fast to follow. "Oh!" Garrick grunts in pain, a fresh cut on his cheek. I can't see his attacks. Damien finishes with a devastating high kick, slamming his heel into Garrick's face and sending the massive knight crashing to the ground. The dust settles. Damien stands over him, not even breathing hard. His eyes burn with a cold fire. "That one," he says, his voice low and dangerous, "was for Victor." Garrick struggles to get up, trembling. He's not done." With a roar of pure rage, he surges forward, his body engulfed in a swirling red aura. Damien's eyes narrow, watching the display with cold curiosity. Garrick unleashes his ultimate technique. Giant, spectral red claws, ready to tear Damien apart. The claws fly forward, a spectacular display of power. "How boisterous," Damien remarks, completely unimpressed. He raises the tip of his own sword, but that's all there is to it. As the massive attack meets the simple point of his blade, it cracks and shatters like glass. The claws dissipate into nothing, leaving Garrick wide open, his face a perfect picture of disbelief. Before he can register his failure, Damien launches himself into the air. A brutal uppercut connects with Garrick's jaw, sending a spray of blood into the air. The knight's massive body is lifted off the ground by the sheer force of the blow, crashing down hard. The fight is over. The Viscount and Victor can only stare in absolute shock. Victor's bruised face breaks into a triumphant grin. "He won!" he exclaims, filled with awe and relief. Damien lets out a small gasp, wincing as he looks at his own bruised hand. Garrick writhes on the ground, clutching his broken arm. "Damn, it hurts!" he screams. His screams are cut short as the cold steel of Damien's sword presses against his throat. All the fight instantly drains out of him. I don't know who you are, but you win, so spare me, please." Damien's response is ice cold. "I am Damien Haxon, you idiot." He looks down at the groveling knight with utter contempt. "And you should have begged for your life earlier. Don't you think it's a little too late? You messed with my family," he lists the crimes, "and you made my ugly servant even uglier. And now you ask me to yield?" "I'm sorry," Garrick babbles, bowing his head. "I apologize for what happened earlier." Damien cuts him off with a chilling smile. And you still don't know who to apologize to? He nods his head towards the figures standing behind him. Garrick looks up, confused. He slowly turns. Looming over him are Victor and the Viscount, their eyes glowing with menace, holding a broken piece of wood and a sword. It's payback time. A silent, horrified sound escapes Garrick's lips as he realizes his fate. This isn't a clean death. This is humiliation. The proud knight of House Leon Bloom is about to receive justice, Haxon family style. The dust has settled. The proud knights of House Leon Bloom are now just 3 beaten men kneeling in the dirt of the Haxon estate, their arrogance shattered. Victor, holding his makeshift club, looks at the knight leader with a savage grin. "Young master, I'm still not satisfied. Can I hit him a bit more?" But Damien stops him, calmly explaining that any more might actually kill him. Damien then muses aloud, "How about cutting off another limb or two instead?" Garrick lets out a terrified shriek. Damien just smirks. "Oh, that doesn't sound too bad." Before the threat escalates, the Viscount puts a firm hand on his son's shoulder. "Damien, that's enough," he says, his voice steady. Seeing his chance, Garrick immediately starts groveling to the Viscount. "Sir Haxon, I was wrong. I apologize for the disrespect." He bows his head right into the dirt. But the Viscount isn't moved. His face is a mask of cold fury. "You think a single apology makes up for this?" He seethes. He knows that if his son didn't have this newfound strength, our territory would have been destroyed, and he would have been dragged off by the Marquis's family to suffer who knows what. Garrick continues to beg, smashing his forehead into the ground. "I beg of you, please, have mercy." The Viscount just looks down on him, his expression unforgiving. Mercy is a luxury Garrick doesn't deserve. But Damien's cold gaze is elsewhere. He's thinking. He turns to his father, shaking his head slightly. He explains his reasoning. Killing them now would mean all-out war with House Lionbloom. If he were alone, he could fight a Marquis without a second thought. But he can't. Not when his family's safety is the one chain that binds him. Still, he can't just let them go. They'll be back for revenge, and soon. He's caught in a stalemate, wondering what to do. Just then, a familiar voice calls out his name. "Sir Damien." It's Agnes, running towards them, her face a picture of concern. "What happened?" she asks, taking in the scene. And in that instant, a plan clicks into place in Damien's mind. "Hold on." He looks at the approaching paladin, her earnest, zealous nature practically radiating from her. She'll be helpful this time too. An opportunity has just presented itself. After a quick, edited version of events, Agnes listens thoughtfully. "Oh, so that's what happened." She looks at him, her eyes bright. "If that's your concern," she says, "I may be able to help." Damien plays along, asking if she has an idea. Agnes beams, proud of the church's recent victory. "Thanks to House Haxon," she announces, "we successfully killed one of Yulan's executive officers. With that," she declares, "we can designate House Haxon as an allied household." Official protection from the Holy Church. The Viscount realizes this might just be their way out. Victor whispers, "Is being their ally, or whatever, that good?" Agnes, her eyes sparkling, grabs Damien's hands. "Then, would you accept our request?" Damien looks down, feigning hesitation before stammering, "Of course." But internally, a wicked grin spreads across his face, his eyes glowing red. This is exactly what he was aiming for. The ultimate shield. He gently pulls his hands away. His father and Victor whisper behind him, Victor asking, did he just use his looks to seduce her? And his father just nodding. Damien turns to the kneeling knights. "Hey, you all heard that right?" He stares down at Garrick. "Go report this to the Lionblooms. Tell them House Haxon is now under the church's protection." His eyes blaze with a terrifying crimson light. "If they try to use force again, they'll face the wrath of the church. If you got that, then get lost." Garrick and his men scramble to their feet and run for their lives. Victor shakes his club at them, yelling, "You should count your lucky stars, you assholes." Watching them flee, the Viscount remarks that they can finally breathe. But Victor looks uneasy. "I'm not so sure." The Viscount agrees. "This isn't over. Now we have to figure out what to do next," he says, a new resolve in his voice. "We need to hold a family meeting." And so the Haxon family gathers. They sit around the dining table. The Viscount, his wife, Louise, Abel, and Damien. Let's begin, the Viscount announces. The Viscountess lays out the topic, how to handle the ongoing feud with House Leon Bloom. But Abel, Damien's older brother, scoffs. "Father, didn't we just get the church's protection? Why do we need to deal with this at all?" Louise calmly corrects him. "Abel, that's because we can't expect the church to intervene fully." The Viscount explains that the church doesn't get involved in noble squabbles. Besides, the Lionbloom's power isn't just their army. They have political and economic power. They could crush a small family like theirs in countless ways without ever drawing a sword. Agnes suggests their best options are paying a massive indemnity or seeking protection from a higher-ranking noble. But then, she gets a theatrical glint in her eye. "There is one other way," she declares. She throws her arms out wide. "Sir Damien Haxon could become a paladin." Damien is stunned. He didn't expect her to bring that up now. He doesn't hesitate. "I don't want to," he says, his response blunt and final. The Viscount tries to smooth things over, but Abel slams his hands on the table. "Father," he glares at Damien, his face twisted with resentment. "Why are you accepting that? If he just becomes a paladin, all of this would be over." He rants at his father to force Damien into it, but Damien's glare is so cold it could freeze fire. "You little," running your mouth like it's none of your business. Abel turns his anger on Damien. "What's with that look? All of this started because of you." But before he can continue, the Viscount slams his own hands on the table. "Abel," he warns. A dark, monstrous aura erupts from Damien, his patience gone. "We have a guest," he growls. "Sit down while I'm asking nicely." The pressure is so intense that Abel stumbles back into his chair, terrified. The room falls into a tense silence, broken only by Abel clicking his tongue in frustration. The Viscountess finally speaks, her voice calm but firm. She says that while Damien caused the conflict, it's not entirely his fault. She lays out the truth. The Lionbloom's second son, Erwin, had lustful intentions toward Louise. He would never have given up so easily. Her voice rings with pride. In truth, Damien protected Louise from that man's scheme, in place of his powerless father. The words hit the Viscount like a physical blow, and he lowers his head in shame. He stands up, his voice heavy with emotion. "So, Damien," he places a hand on Damien's shoulder. Damien looks up, surprised. "You did well today," his father says, a look of immense pride on his face. Damien is speechless. "You stood up to the insult against our family and repaid them properly." Damien is genuinely shocked. He didn't expect his father to feel this way. Damien bows his head, muttering that it was something he had to do. Abel can only sulk in his chair, defeated. "Don't worry," the Viscount declares. "I'll take care of this matter from here on." He smiles, telling his wife to let him act like a proper father for once. Just as the family seems united, a butler hurries in. "Lord Haxon, please pardon the intrusion." The butler explains that someone has arrived from House Gold Pixie. The Viscount is confused. "Gold Pixie? What business does the Duke have with us?" The butler sweats nervously, struggling with the words. Well, young Master Damien borrowed money using the family's wheat fields as collateral, and the repayment period has passed." The Viscount freezes. Damien clenches his fists. "Shit," he thinks. He completely forgot about the debts his past self racked up. The Viscount begins to tremble with a rage that eclipses everything that happened today. He grabs Damien by the collar, his face turning a demonic shade of red as he screams, "Damien!" His roar of fury echoes through the entire mansion. "You damn brat!" Just when you think you've put out one fire, you find out your past self was an idiot who played with matches. A new problem, a ghost from his foolish past, has just walked through the door. A man with a slimy, overly friendly smile takes off his hat. "Oh, Sir Damien," he says. "Good day to you." Damien vaguely recognizes him from a time when he was naive and easily fooled. The man, Olin Demishi, a branch manager for a loan company called Dash and Cash, says he's come to collect on the agreed-upon date, flanked by two massive thugs. Damien remembers it all now. This guy, Olin, had approached his past self with every sweet word imaginable, convincing him to use his family's land as collateral for a loan. He was the one who talked me into it, Damien thinks. My past self was a complete fool. He curses his past self internally. Why would you hand over the land deed? He turns to Olin, trying to keep his composure. How much do I owe again? Olin holds up 3 fingers with a smug grin. You borrowed 200 gold, so with interest, the total is 300 gold. The number is astronomical for a minor noble house. The loan shark asks if he wants to see the contract, but Damien's mind is racing. He knows his family doesn't have that kind of cash. At this rate, my whole family, he flashes to an image of them, broken and begging on the streets, is going to be tossed out onto the streets. Olin reminds him that if the money isn't repaid today, the land is forfeited. Damien counters, "You said the collateral was just a formality." Olin's smile widens. He flashes the insignia of his employer, saying Duke Gold Pixie himself has ordered them to collect on all debts. "So, if you understand, please go and bring the money," he says, letting the sentence hang in the air. Or, his voice drops to a predatory whisper, "Do you not have it?" Damien takes a breath and gives the only answer he can. "I wasn't able to prepare the repayment." Olin feigns surprise. "Huh?" Then a massive, triumphant grin splits his face. This is the moment he lives for. "I see," he says, his voice dripping with satisfaction. He leans back, making himself comfortable on the family sofa. He clicks his tongue. "Then you shouldn't have borrowed money in the first place." He cracks his knuckles, the friendly mask gone. "Oh well, I guess I'll just have to collect it my way." His 2 thugs step forward, their eyes glowing as they loom over Damien. "I knew all along you couldn't repay it," Olin thinks. While he likes money, this is what he enjoys even more. Seeing arrogant nobles forced to grovel and beg for mercy, he wonders what kind of face young Master Hoxen will make. He licks his lips with a disgusting, feverish anticipation. Just imagining it gives him the chills. While Damien deals with the loan shark, his family is in the other room, consumed by anxiety. The Viscount paces back and forth, unable to stand still, while Abel leans against a wall, equally distressed. The Viscountess, however, is calmly sipping her tea, telling her husband and son to calm down. The Viscount explodes. "My lady, how can I possibly sit still when our family might be ruined?" Abel chimes in. "Exactly. Our entire future is at stake." But the Viscountess simply takes another sip. "Damien said he'd handle it, so let's trust him and wait." Louise agrees, pointing out that Damien has never failed them. The Viscount grabs his face in frustration. "That's only because his swordsmanship is exceptional. Combat skills and negotiation skills are 2 different things." He flashes back to Damien's usual method of negotiation, which usually involves a lot of punching. And that's exactly what's happening. One of the thugs is sent flying with a single, brutal kick. "Oops," Damien says flatly. He casually grabs the first thug by the hair, noting that his father is going to yell at him for breaking the wall. The second thug roars, "You little brat," and draws his sword. But Damien just raises a hand, a swirl of dark purple energy gathering around it. He catches the man by the throat, and the thug immediately starts choking, his life force visibly draining from his body. Damien lifts the massive man off the ground with one hand. Olin can only stare in horror. Damien turns to the terrified loan shark with a twisted, evil grin. "You drew your sword on a noble," he says sweetly. "So this is just self-defense, right?" Olin lets out a terrified shriek. Damien drops the unconscious thug and walks towards the trembling loan shark. He looms over him. "Hey, loosen up your legs," he orders. Olin scrambles to kneel properly on the sofa. Damien states plainly, "Listen, I can't repay that money right now." Olin waves his hands frantically. "No, it's fine, it's totally fine." Damien cuts him off, leaning in close with a charming yet terrifying smile. "Then, how about I repay you in another way?" He grabs Olin by the collar. Olin can only tremble and stammer. Yes, his life is now in Damien's hands. The next day, a new sun rises over the Haxon estate. Abel is standing outside, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. "Father, I am so heartbroken." The Viscount looks at him, bewildered. "Why?" "Because justice was defeated by violence," Abel wails dramatically. Nearby, Damien says his goodbyes to his mother and sister, who tell him to have a safe trip. Abel throws himself back in despair. Why? His father just tells him to knock it off and cheer for his brother. The Viscount watches Damien, admitting he's still worried if this plan will actually work. Agnes is also there. "What a pity, Sir Damien, to think we're already parting." Damien thanks her for all her help. She replies that she simply did what she had to. She adds that her investigation is pretty much wrapped up, so her team will be returning tomorrow as well. She gives him a formal blessing from the church. I hope your journey is blessed, Sir Damien. But she can't resist one last try. Also, if you change your mind, Damien cuts her off with a slight smirk. No, I won't. With the goodbyes done, Damien turns to his carriage. Victor is already inside. Yes, I've loaded the luggage. Image, KO1-906140-1000. The carriage door closes with a solid thud. Inside, Victor looks around in awe. Wow, it's cozy. Their driver, Olin, stammers out a welcome, looking absolutely terrified. The loan shark, now a glorified chauffeur, promises to make sure their journey is completely comfortable, his voice shaking. Damien gives him a bright smile. That's a good attitude, he says cheerfully. With that energy, let's have lobster for lunch. He then turns to Victor with a grin. Victor, it's time. The loyal servant beams back. Yes, young master, let's go, Victor yells from the window as the carriage begins to move. The horse neighs, and with a crack of the whip, the wheels begin to turn, kicking up dust from the road. Damien looks ahead, a determined glint in his eye. All right, let's get moving. The carriage rumbles down the road, heading towards a new city and a new conflict. To House Gold Pixie we go. After a long journey, the trio finally arrives. Victor looks up at the sheer scale of the estate, letting out a gasp of pure awe. Even the terrified Olin looks impressed. Before them stands the Gold Pixie Estate, a massive, opulent mansion that screams wealth and power, a residence truly fitting for the richest family in the kingdom. Damien gives Olin a cheerful, backhanded compliment. Nice journey, thanks to you. I won't forget this if things go well. Olin, sweating and bowing, assures him the Duke has been informed and they can go right in. But the moment Damien's back is turned, Olin's face twists into a mask of pure hatred. That piece of shit, he thinks, flashing back to Damien using him as a footstool. He worked me like a dog. Olin forces another smile, wishing Damien well, but in his mind, he's cursing him. I hope you fail and end up dead. Damien just throws a casual, yeah, thanks, over his shoulder. He turns to Victor and the now demoted Olin. I'll be back, he says with a confident smile. Victor cheers him on, full of faith. Inside, Damien stands before the master of the house, a man radiating quiet, calculating power. Damien Haxon? The man asks. This is Duke Adam Gold Pixie, the richest man in the kingdom. He leans forward, his chin resting on his hand. The infamous troublemaker of the Haxon family? Damien gives a slight, mocking smile. I'm honored you recognize me. But internally he scoffs. They're all the same, always judging by rumor. The Duke gets straight to the point. So, you were looking for me? Why? The room is vast, and Damien stands alone, facing the Duke and his retainers. Damien calmly explains that he borrowed money and the due date has passed. The Duke leans back, a small smile on his face. Ah, so you're a customer. Damien gets to the heart of his proposal. He doesn't have the money right now, so he'd like to pay it off another way, with something far more valuable. He strikes a confident pose, a sly grin on his face. I'll defeat the Leon Blooms to pay off my debt. The room falls silent. The Duke's eyes widen in surprise. His knights are utterly shocked by the sheer audacity of the proposal. The Duke's senior knight, Igayol, murmurs, "This lad must have heard the news." The Duke agrees. It seems so. Damien already knows what they're talking about. Everyone in the kingdom knows the rumor. At the border between the Lion Blooms and the Gold Pixies, a massive gold mine was found. The two families have planned a duel to decide who gets the monopoly, and thanks to his past life, Damien already knows the outcome of this duel. He remembers it vividly. The champion of House Gold Pixie utterly defeated. The result is the Lion Blooms' overwhelming victory. With their new gold, the Lion Blooms rapidly expanded their power, while the Gold Pixies began to decline. This duel was a pivotal moment in history, and Damien's plan is clear as day. If he helps the Duke win, he can repay his debt and keep the Lion Blooms in check. A perfect plan to kill two birds with one stone. The Duke smirks, intrigued. You sure are ambitious. He asks if the rumors are true, that Damien defeated the Lion Bloom's second son and destroyed a large criminal organization. Damien just gives a slight smile. It isn't all rumors, he replies, confirming just enough to pique the Duke's interest. The Duke's eyes narrow. Is that so? Quite tempting. He admits he's been looking for a knight for the duel. But one of his knights, a man with a cocky ponytail named Ernst, speaks up. He says that while Damien might be able to fight the second Auk's son, the duel is against the oldest, Michael Lionbloom. The Duke asks Damien if he can really defeat Michael, a renowned genius swordsman. Damien gives a confident thumbs up. Yes, he's skilled, but I'm just as… Before he can finish, Ernst cuts him off. Your Grace, do not trust him. Ernst argues that rumors are always exaggerated, and Damien is just an arrogant kid. Surprisingly, the Duke agrees his words hold merit. Ernst presses his advantage, confident that Miss Chelsea, the Duke's daughter, will bring back the perfect candidate. Another knight agrees, adding that Miss Chelsea has been gone for a month, looking for a knight strong enough to fight Michael. They all agree it's about time for her to return, certain she'll bring back an excellent knight. The knights all stand there with smug, convinced expressions. Damien clicks his tongue in annoyance. These ugly bastards are ruining it for me. The Duke leans back, a calculating look on his face. That's what my people think. What should I do? Damien realizes the Duke is testing him. Then I'll just have to show them. New SD. Damien's voice cuts through the room. You're all gravely mistaken. The knights look at him, stunned. He points to his own chest. If you wish to win, you must have me. No matter who Miss Chelsea brings back, they won't be as good as me. Ernst is furious. Your arrogance is sickening. Damien leans in, a provocative glint in his eye. If you require proof, I'll block your ultimate attack. The knight is speechless. What? He continues to taunt him. Just one, the most impressive one you can manage. If I block it, that will prove my worth. Ernst's face contorts with rage. This bastard. How dare he underestimate me? Ernst turns to the Duke, begging for permission. Your Grace, with your permission, I will teach this kid a lesson. The Duke just watches, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. This is interesting. A wide, predatory smile spreads across the Duke's face. Very well, I permit it. And so, the stage is set. Damien and Ernst face each other in the center of the grand hall. Victor, watching from the sidelines, is panicking. Young master, what is happening? Damien just shrugs. It just kind of happened. You stay back. Victor watches as Ernst's spear becomes wreathed in a fiery aura, his power far beyond anything Victor has ever seen. I feel like you're the one in danger, he thinks. The Duke gives the order. Begin, Sir Howitz. The knight grips his spear, acknowledging the command. He slams the butt of his spear on the ground. I'll forgive you if you'll get on your knees and beg. Damien lets out a dramatic yawn. I'm tired. Get started. This casual disrespect is the final straw. This little, you're begging me to kill you. Ernst channels his mana, his spear glowing with powerful blue energy. He lunges forward, a blur of motion. Damien watches him come. You said an ultimate attack? Image, Shates 2's 225-2. He smirks. Did I piss him off too much? Ernst unleashes a devastating thrust, the spear's energy carving deep gouges into the stone floor. The attack is impressive. Damien knows that if it were his past self, he would have died instantly. The attack closes in, a massive wave of destructive energy. But just as the spear is about to hit, Damien vanishes. The attack slams into the floor where he stood, shattering the tiles. Ernst's eyes widen, a manic grin spreading across his face as he thinks he's won. Idiot. You fell for it. But then he feels a cold hand on his chest. In the split second he was focused on his attack, Damien reappeared behind him, his hand plunged deep into the knight's chest, just shy of his heart. Victor screams in terror, while the Duke and his senior knight look on, their faces a mixture of shock and utter disbelief. Damien has proven his point in the most dramatic way possible. But in the next instant, Damien plants his foot firmly on the ground. He stands completely solid as the energy from the attack dissipates harmlessly behind him. Ernst's face is a mask of pure disbelief. No way. He endured my surprise attack. He can't comprehend how someone could just take a hit like that. The Duke's senior knight looks to his master, a silent question in his eyes. The Duke himself is calm, but surprise flickers behind his stoic expression. Damien pulls his hand back from the knight's chest, a dark stain of absorbed energy on his shirt. He gives the Duke a sharp, triumphant grin. The representative position is mine now, right? Suddenly, Victor comes flying out of nowhere, tackling Damien in a massive hug. Young master, he wails, squeezing the air right out of him. Damien winces, patting his servant on the back. "Are you okay? That hurts, you bastard." Victor sobs that he thought something terrible was going to happen. The Duke begins to clap slowly, a genuine impressed smile on his face. "You really endured Howitz's blow. Incredible!" He admits to himself that while he was doubtful, Damien is truly capable. He really is something else. The Duke stands and addresses his retainers. "Vassals, listen up. Damien Haxon has fabulously proven his ability. As promised, I raise Damien Haxon as our representative." Ernst tries to protest, but the Duke silences him with a single, sharp glare. "Enough," he snaps. "I'm in a good mood. Don't screw it up." The defeated knight can only bow his head in submission. Ernst thinks to himself, "Damn it, how did this happen? I felt my attack land." He knows he's being treated badly, but a part of him understands. It's not that he's untalented, he just met someone on a completely different level. Damien knows exactly why he won. His own level is already far beyond that of a middle-class knight. But because only low-class fighters can participate, he had to act. A performance good enough to fool anyone. Still, it was a close call. He admits that if he hadn't used mana to block the attack, it could have been genuinely dangerous. The wound on his chest was real. Later, the Duke approaches him, a thoughtful look on his face. "This," the Duke says, gesturing to the stain on Damien's shirt. "You must have internal injuries. I can't just watch." He twists a ring on his finger, activating a magical seal. A shimmering black portal opens beside him. A subspace magic tool. Damien knows those are incredibly rare and expensive. The Duke reaches into the portal and pulls out a small, ornate wooden box. He opens it and offers it to Damien. "This is a present for you. Inside are 5 small golden spheres. A balance pill," the Duke explains, "a high-priced item from the alchemy school." Damien recognizes its value. Jackpot. The Duke explains it's normally for training, but it's also highly effective for treating internal injuries. Damien accepts the gift gratefully. "Thank you." The Duke gives him a firm pat on the shoulder. "I look forward to your work in the future. The deal is sealed." Damien gives a confident smile. "Yes, sir." The next day, the sun shines brightly over the Gold Pixie Estate's training grounds. Damien is warming up, stretching his arms in preparation for some training. He places a hand on his chest. The supplement definitely has a good effect. His internal injuries are almost completely gone after just one night. He looks around the training area, impressed. The duchy truly has good training tools. He smiles to himself. He can train with this moving forward. Suddenly, a sharp, challenging voice calls out from behind him. "Are you Damien Haxon?" Damien turns to see another knight standing there with an arrogant look on his face. The knight introduces himself with a smug grin. "I am Pobble Bermome," another low-class knight looking for trouble. He gestures to the 2 unique-looking individuals behind him. "And these are my blood brothers." The trio strikes a ridiculous pose. "We are also dueling knights here to partake in the duels." Pobble points at Damien, explaining they were training outside yesterday and missed the confrontation. "Lucky you," Damien mutters. "If we'd been there," Pobble boasts, "it would have been us teaching you a lesson, not Sir Howitz." Damien just gives him a bored look. Pobble says the duel is an important event, and he hopes Damien doesn't drag them down with his laughable ability. He waves a dismissive hand. "If you understand, leave so you don't interrupt our training." Damien just watches them go. Whatever. But then he reconsiders. This is good. He was curious about the other knights' abilities, and now he can see for himself. The 3 knights begin their training, calling out absurd technique names like Immovable Akalanatha and Ascending Phoenix. They clash their wooden swords in a flurry of flashy but ultimately useless movements. One of them shouts, "Today is our 9087th battle. This time I'll win." The other laughs, "You wish." They lock blades, straining against each other with theatrical grunts. Pobble suddenly disengages and ducks, only to get his hair pulled. He retaliates with a brutal headbutt. The man stumbles back, impressed. "As expected of you, Pobble. To predict my attack and block with your forehead." Pobble grins through the pain, a massive bump already forming on his head. The other knight bows. "I've learned something new today," Pobble graciously replies. "You've improved a lot too. No victory today." The 3rd, larger knight runs up, itching for a fight. "Hey, battle with me today." They huddle up, spirits high, convinced that if they keep this up, they'll defeat Leon Bloom and raise the honor of the duchy. All for one for all. They cheer, raising their swords in a display of misplaced camaraderie. Their faces are twisted into expressions of idiotic, over-the-top determination. Damien and Victor can only watch, completely speechless. Victor whispers, "Young master, what's wrong?" Damien's internal thought is blunt and filled with dread. "Ah, we're fucked." He turns to his servant, his face grim, his hand clenching into a fist. "Victor, I think we're screwed." His voice is heavy with the weight of his realization. I have no confidence in winning with those idiots. Duke Adam Gold Pixie, the man who just bet his house's honor on a kid, is laughing his head off. He finds the whole situation hilarious, remarking that this isn't what you'd expect from a high-class knight. Beside him, his veteran knight commander, Gal Heimlich, remains stoic. But the Duke, with a sly grin, presses him, "Be honest. You're intrigued, aren't you?" The reason for their conversation goes back to the previous night. In the Duke's office, Damien respectfully bowed, turning down an offer to train. He calmly stated he prefers to work alone. The Duke, leaning back, casually accepted. But internally, the Duke was stunned. Damien had just refused training from the renowned knight commander, Gal Heimlich himself. Back in the present, the Duke lets out another chuckle. He finds Damien's boldness incredibly interesting. Guile, however, remains silent, processing the young man's actions. The Duke leans forward, his curiosity getting the better of him. "So, what do you really think of him?" Gal finally speaks, his expression serious. He admits Damien is an exceptional young man. To use mana in a split second to block a strike from a knight like Howitz, that's not something just anyone can do. His mind flashes back to that moment, the clash of steel, and Howitz spitting up blood from the sheer force of Damien's block, as his servant screamed his name in terror. Victor had rushed in immediately, grabbing Damien and asking if he was okay. Damien, brushing him off, just grumbled that his grip hurt. Watching from the side, the Duke had clapped his hands in delight, amazed that Damien actually endured the powerful blow. He thought to himself that while he had his doubts, Damien had proven himself to be more than capable. This kid really was something special. His voice booming, the Duke had addressed his men, declaring that Damien Haxon had fabulously proven his ability and was officially their representative. One of the other knights tried to object, but the Duke cut him off with a furious glare, telling him not to ruin his good mood. The knight immediately shrank back, muttering a defeated, "Yes, sir." As Damien watched the scene, he sighed, looking exhausted. He knew these knights were useless. It looked like he had no choice but to handle things himself. Damien turns his attention to the trio of incompetent knights. "Hey," he calls out, his tone dismissive, "you three punks over there." The knights are instantly offended. One of them can't believe he was just called a punk. Damien, cracking his knuckles, ignores them and gets straight to the point. Time for a sparring match. The female knight with purple hair steps forward, a smug grin on her face. She finds his confidence amusing after he just saw their skills. She accepts his challenge, announcing she'll be his first opponent. But Damien's gaze is cold, his eyes glowing. He tells her she's misunderstanding something. He gestures with his finger, a flicker of power in his eyes. He wants all three of them to come at him at once. The trio is stunned into silence, completely thrown by his absurd demand. The silence breaks as they erupt in anger, shouting that he's an arrogant brat. Damien stands his ground, unfazed. The Lead Knight declares that fighting 3-on-1 is against the knight's code, but when dealing with a mad dog, she snarls that a good beating is the only way to teach him a lesson. With that, all three of them lunge at Damien. Their fists fly towards him, but Damien's expression doesn't even twitch. His eyes are cold and empty. In the next instant, there's a flash of movement so fast it's almost invisible. The lead knight can only let out a confused, "Huh?" Before she can process what happened, she's flat on her back, frozen in shock. She pushes herself up, her mind reeling. The world was a blur, and now she's on the floor. She looks over and sees her two companions completely knocked out beside her. They were all taken down in a single moment. A voice from above asks if she's finally awake. She looks up, her eyes wide with shock. Damien stands over them, arms crossed, looking down with pure disappointment. "Just as pathetic as I thought," he says. Victor rushes over, panicked, asking why he's getting into trouble again. Damien calmly replies that this isn't trouble, he was just teaching them a lesson. The knight is stunned. She remembers them all attacking, but after that, her memory is a blank. We flash back just 5 minutes. From Damien's perspective, we see the three knights charging, faces twisted in rage. But Damien is a different beast entirely. He effortlessly sidesteps the first punch. His hand shoots out in a precise, elegant chop. His eyes glow as he moves through their clumsy attacks, dodging with supernatural speed. The view shifts, showing the two male knights already unconscious as Damien lands the final blow on the leader. For a split second, her eyes widen in fury, unable to comprehend his speed. A single, precise strike connects with the side of her neck. Her eyes roll back as she loses consciousness. With a final, spinning kick that never even touches his opponent, Damien finishes the fight. A close-up on his eye reveals the cold, calculating focus of a warrior who has seen 1,000 battles. Back in the present, the lead knight is still trying to wrap her head around it. All three of them knocked out? She can't believe it. She looks up at Damien, who is casually dusting himself off, and wonders what kind of monster he is. He smirks, telling them he didn't even break a sweat. The three knights are now kneeling before him, completely humbled. Damien asks them who's been training them. The lead knight stammers that they're being trained by a mid-class knight. Damien repeats the words, mid-class, with clear disdain. It makes sense now, he thinks. A mid-class knight could only produce this level of incompetence. He considers telling them to quit, but decides against it. Instead, he gives them a new order. After their training ends each day, they are to come find him here. From now on, they'll be sparring with him daily. She nervously points out that if their trainer finds out they're getting beaten up every day, he'll know something is wrong. Damien gives them a sharp, predatory grin. "Don't worry," he says. "I have a special way of fighting. No matter how much I hit you, you won't have a single scratch." The realization dawns on them. Now that they think about it, even though he just demolished them, they're all physically fine. Damien's expression turns nostalgic, almost dark. He tells them that back in the day, he learned a very specific way to beat people. His mind drifts back to a story from long ago. There was once a legendary man who roamed the continent, a man whose purpose was to reform criminals. He was known only as the character corrector. His method was brutally simple. He'd find a criminal, tie them up, and then he would beat them for an hour straight. If that didn't work, he'd just double the duration. The legend says the longest he ever beat someone was for 512 hours. But through this endless process, the character corrector began to feel pity for his victims. He started to wonder if there was a way to beat someone without actually endangering their life. And so, through sheer dedication, he reached the level of a master and developed a unique technique, the traceless strike. Back in the present, Damien explains this secret art is what he used on them, a technique that inflicts intense pain without leaving a single mark. "Do you understand now?" he asks. "Do you understand just how weak and worthless you all are?" The word worthless echoes in their minds, their faces a mixture of shame and humiliation. But then his tone shifts. He tells them not to worry. There's still a month until the duel. A predatory smile spreads across his face. He promises that in that time, he'll turn them all from worthless bugs into useful ones. The three knights can only stare back in absolute shock and terror. They've just been put on a 1-month training program from hell. As Damien is about to get back to his training, he's interrupted. The Duke's attendant comes running towards him, calling his name. The attendant, out of breath, informs him that his grace is looking for him. Damien asks what the matter is. The reason is revealed as a striking woman in a vibrant red outfit appears in the hall. The attendant announces with a flourish, "Lady Chelsea has returned." Just when Damien thought he'd secured his spot, a new challenger walks through the door. It's none other than the Duke's own daughter, who enters the room and coolly greets her father, her voice cutting through the silence. Kneeling before the Duke is a woman in a striking red and black outfit. This is Chelsea Goldpixie, his eldest daughter. Behind her, a mountain of a man also kneels in submission as she formally announces her return. Watching from the sidelines is Howitz, the very knight Damien recently put in his place. He can't hide his smug grin. He knows things are about to get very interesting. The Duke gets straight to business. He acknowledges it's been a month and asks if she succeeded in her mission to find a champion for their family's upcoming duel. A sly, confident smile spreads across Chelsea's face. Her eyes glint as she simply says yes. And with that one word, the atmosphere in the room completely shifts. Damien's new position is already being challenged. At her unspoken command, the giant warrior behind her rises to his full, intimidating height. The Duke watches him, his expression unreadable, but his focus is absolute. The man cracks his knuckles with a sound like grinding stone and introduces himself with a booming voice as Guillermo Blackwing, the Wild Beast. This isn't just some knight. He's a mercenary with a terrifying reputation. That name immediately causes a stir among the other knights. Guillermo Blackwing. They've all heard the stories. They recall the tales from the Aclaren War, where he earned his title by rampaging across the battlefield, a one-man army who slaughtered countless soldiers without mercy. The Duke listens, his eyes narrowing slightly. He's heard the rumors that no ordinary warrior can stand against this man. A soft ohos escapes his lips. He's clearly intrigued. Addressing the mercenary directly, the Duke's voice is smooth and political as he acknowledges that he's heard a great deal about him. He confirms that Guillermo certainly earned his fearsome title. The mercenary just grins, proud that his reputation precedes him, even here in the Apple Kingdom. Chelsea stands, her confidence on full display. She informs her father that Sir Guillermo has sworn his loyalty to her and has promised to fight for their family in the duel. With a triumphant look, she gestures to the massive warrior beside her, declaring he's more than enough to crush their rival's champion, Michael. The other knights can't help but agree, whispering amongst themselves. A brute like Guillermo, who has perfected his strength through pure, bloody experience, is likely far stronger than Michael Lionbloom. The Duke strokes his chin, lost in thought. While this is certainly good news, he admits to himself that it also makes things a bit difficult. Chelsea immediately picks up on his hesitation. Confused, she asks what he means. The Duke calmly replies that there's someone he hasn't introduced yet. He turns his head slowly, his gaze falling right on Damien. With a casual tone that carries immense weight, he continues, "He's the representative for the duel." And as Damien steps forward from the shadows, his posture relaxed, but his presence undeniable, the Duke finishes his introduction. Sir Damien Haxon. A flicker of pure shock and anger flashes in Chelsea's eyes. The game has just been flipped on its head. She whips around to face her father, her voice filled with disbelief as she reminds him she asked him to wait for her. But the Duke is ice cold, stating that while she did ask, he never promised that he would. A predatory smile plays on Chelsea's lips. She tells him to simply change the representative then. The Duke just closes his eyes, dismissing her demand with a curt, "I'll have to think about it." But Chelsea isn't having it. "You don't even need to think about this," she yells, pointing at Damien. "I'd never even heard of this guy." Damien watches her outburst, calmly thinking that this must be the Duke's notorious daughter. He can feel the contempt in her gaze, as if he's some insect. She insists it's obvious they should choose a renowned warrior like Sir Guillermo over some no-name knight. Damien keeps his expression neutral, but his mind is racing. Wait a minute, this guy. The Duke finally cuts in, his voice firm. "No." He acknowledges that Sir Guillermo is renowned, of course. He then gestures towards his own knight, Howitz, who flinches at the mention. The Duke states plainly that Sir Damien here is strong enough to block Howitz's ultimate attack. It's a subtle but powerful defense of his choice. A dry, humorless laugh escapes Chelsea's lips. She looks at her father with pure scorn, accusing him of just using this as another opportunity to ignore her accomplishments. The accusation hangs heavy in the air. "Your actions never line up with your words," she seethes, "both for me and for Mother." The Duke's eyes snap open, his voice sharp as he demands to know how she dares to speak that way in front of guests. Chelsea throws her head back with a sarcastic laugh. "Please forgive me," she says, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. "I'm just so tired from my journey." She turns and walks away dramatically. Damien watches the entire exchange, calmly noting that the two seem to have quite the grudge against one another. The Duke waves a dismissive hand, trying to regain control. He tells them to stop arguing and that he'll discuss this later, excusing them all. But before anyone can move, a booming laugh erupts from the side of the room. It's Guillermo, lying on his back and laughing his head off at the family drama. He sits up, speaking directly to the Duke. "Your Grace, there's no need to come to a decision with words. We're men." Chelsea looks on, clearly annoyed by his interruption. The Duke's elderly butler mutters under his breath about how rude the mercenary is, but no one is paying him any mind. Guillermo gets to his feet and points directly at Damien. "The strongest one should be the representative, no?" he declares. "Why don't we just fight and have the victor be the representative?" He's offering a simple, brutal solution. Chelsea is furious, trying to silence him, but the Duke cuts her off. "Ah, right," he says, looking at Guillermo thoughtfully. "You're not wrong. He's clearly enjoying this chaos." The Duke then turns his gaze to Damien, putting him on the spot. "Sir Damien, what do you think?" Damien immediately recognizes the ploy. The Duke is testing him again, seeing how he'll handle this direct challenge. Damien knew he'd have to show off his skills, but he calmly says out loud that Guillermo is right. The strongest person should fight. But, he adds with absolute confidence, "I don't think it's necessary to fight." Guillermo looks confused for a second, then his face twists into a brutish sneer as he extends a hand. Damien walks right up to him. "I want to check something too," he says. He turns to Guillermo and suggests, "Hey, why don't we decide who the stronger person is right here?" A vein pops on Guillermo's forehead. He's being openly challenged by this no-name kid. Guillermo grabs Damien's hand, his voice a low growl. "It's not my fault if I pull out your arm." But Damien just smiles, his reply dripping with sarcasm. How terrifying. A cold, predatory grin spreads across Damien's face, his eyes glowing. "Then I'll be nice," he says, "and only stop at dislocating your shoulder." Guillermo's face contorts into a savage, toothy snarl. He's about to crush this kid's hand, growling back at the absurd threat. In that instant, Guillermo's eyes flare red with mana. He channels all his strength into his grip, ready to shatter Damien's bones. But in a flash, the world turns upside down for him. Before he can even register what's happening, he's airborne. Damien uses the mercenary's own momentum, twisting his body and sweeping his leg. With a deafening crash, Guillermo is slammed onto the floor. The entire room freezes. The Duke, his butler, and even the arrogant Knight Howitz stare with wide-eyed shock. They can't believe what they just saw. Damien stands over the fallen mercenary, dusting off his hands as if nothing happened. Chelsea stares, completely bewildered, stammering, "What just happened?" The Duke's old butler, however, sees it for what it was. A look of pure awe crosses his face as he breathes one word: amazing. He understands exactly what happened. Guillermo tried to crush Damien's hand, but Damien, with flawless technique, used Guillermo's own overwhelming strength against him. It was a perfect display of skill over raw power. The butler thinks to himself, "This boy isn't just strong, he's also incredibly skilled." Damien looks down at his fallen opponent with a calm, knowing smile. From the floor, Guillermo glares up at Damien, his face a mask of pure, seething hatred. "You," he snarls, completely humiliated. He struggles to get up, his voice shaking with rage. "How dare you humiliate me like this?" Damien just smirks. As expected," he says casually. "You're sturdier than I thought. I really was going to dislocate your shoulder." He's openly mocking him, and Guillermo is not taking it well. A guttural roar escapes Guillermo's lips. "You bastard. I'm going to shred you to pieces." His hand tightens around the hilt of his weapon, which begins to glow with a sinister, purple energy. In a blur of motion, he swings his massive axe, which is now enveloped in a violent purple aura. He's done with tests of strength. This is a killing blow. Chelsea screams his name in alarm, realizing he's completely lost control. This has gone way too far. Guillermo brings the glowing axe down towards Damien's head, his face twisted in a mask of pure rage, screaming, "I'll crack your skull open." A killing aura explodes from Guillermo. His face twists into a mask of pure rage as he brings his glowing battle axe down, no longer testing, but intending to end this right here and now. The air crackles with violent purple energy. From Damien's perspective, all he can see are the wild, heat-filled eyes of the mercenary as he screams that he will crush his skull. But just as the axe is about to connect, an incredible pressure floods the room. It's not from Guillermo. Both he and Damien freeze, their eyes wide with shock. The attack is stopped dead in its tracks. A voice, cold as ice, cuts through the tension. "Stop." It's the Duke's elderly butler. A wave of green energy radiates from him as he growls, "You dare." The butler's eyes glow with terrifying power. "You brandish your weapons in front of His Excellency like that?" he snarls. "Do you want to die?" Under the crushing weight of his aura, Guillermo can barely stay on his feet, letting out a choked gasp. Damien watches, completely unfazed by the killing intent, but he's genuinely impressed by the butler. Incredible. Just feeling this aura makes it clear. This old man is a high-class warrior for a reason. The butler glares at the now subdued Guillermo, telling him he'll let it slide this once, out of respect for Lady Chelsea. Chelsea can only look down, humiliated and angry. But, the butler warns, his voice leaving no room for argument, be aware that there will be no second chances. The message is crystal clear: step out of line again, and you're dead. Guillermo falls to his knees, panting heavily as the overwhelming pressure finally vanishes. He's been completely put in his place, not by the warrior he challenged, but by an old man in a butler's uniform. The Duke calmly dusts off his hands as if he were just watching a mild inconvenience. With a smug smile, he turns to his butler. "So there was some private commotion," he says, his tone light and amused. He orchestrated this entire mess and is clearly enjoying the outcome. The butler straightens up, his powerful aura gone as if it were never there. He looks at the Duke and states that after that display, it would be best for Sir Damien to remain the representative. But Sir Ernst, the knight Damien beat before, isn't having it. "Your Excellency, this wasn't a fair fight," he shouts, unable to accept what he just saw. The Duke just looks at him with a non-committal hum. Ernst starts making excuses, claiming Sir Guillermo was exhausted from his journey, giving Damien an unfair advantage. Damien just rolls his eyes internally. This piece of work again. Ernst continues his whining, arguing that Guillermo is a weapons master and you can't properly judge his skills with just a fistfight. Chelsea jumps in to back him up, stammering that Sir Ernst is right. Desperate to salvage the situation, she insists they need a proper duel to compare their abilities fairly, not some kid's joke. The Duke has had enough. He turns to his daughter, his expression hardening. "Chelsea, stop forcing it." But she ignores him, her voice rising as she yells, "Your Excellency!" With a loud bang, the Duke slammed his hand on the desk, his voice booming with fury. "I'm telling you to stop bragging about your incompetence." The words hit Chelsea like a physical blow. She freezes, her face a picture of shock and shame. Utterly defeated, she turns away, her shoulders slumped. "I committed a discourtesy," she mutters, bowing her head. Sir Ernst winces, realizing he pushed things too far. He's completely out of his depth. Just as the room falls into an awkward silence, Damien raises his hand. With a polite, almost cheerful smile, he asks, "Your Excellency, may I say something?" The sudden shift in tone catches everyone off guard. Damien looks directly at Chelsea, his smile never wavering. "Can I accept Lady Chelsea's, offer?" Chelsea snaps her head around, her eyes wide with disbelief. She argued for a duel, but she never expected him to actually agree to it. The Duke simply raises an eyebrow. This is getting more interesting than he could have hoped. Later, as Damien and Victor walk through the halls, his loyal servant is in a full-blown panic. "No, young master, why did you accept the duel? You wouldn't have lost anything if you just stayed still." Damien just tells him to stop nagging, saying he has his reasons. Damien stops in front of a sturdy-looking building, asking if this is the smithy the Duke mentioned. Victor confirms that he thinks so. The Duke had told Damien that since his sword broke, he would have a new one made at the duchy's expense. Damien thinks to himself that he could beat Guillermo with a training sword, but there's no reason to turn down a free gift. A smith inside looks up as they enter. Victor explains they're here under the Duke's orders to pick up a sword for his master. The smith nods, saying he heard they were coming. He gestures for them to follow him into the main workshop. The smithy is filled with gleaming, master-crafted weapons and armor. Victor gasps in awe, completely blown away by the sight. "All the weapons look amazing!" Victor exclaims. Damien agrees, then smirks at his servant. "Yeah, do you want one too, Victor?" Victor immediately gets excited, asking if he can choose something expensive. But as Damien browses, his eyes suddenly lock onto something. Tucked away in a case is a sword with a simple yet distinct design. He feels a jolt of recognition. That sword, it's definitely... The smith notices his interest, remarking on what a unique sword it is. He explains it was a custom order from a knight who used to work for the duchy, but the knight had to leave suddenly before it was finished. The sword was never claimed. Damien's eyes narrow. He asks a very specific question. "Did that knight happen to give you unified ringing steels to make this?" The smith is stunned. "How did you know that?" Damien knows because he recognizes the design. It's similar to the favorite weapon of a legendary master from his past life, a man known as the Sword Musician. Without hesitation, Damien pulls the sword from its case. "I'll take this sword." The smith looks nervous, asking if he's sure, even after knowing what it's made from. Damien's answer is a simple, confident yes. He knows exactly what this metal is. Unlike most rare metals that just amplify mana, junified ringing steel pushes mana back, creating waves that make it incredibly difficult to control, but deadly in the right hands. He asks the smith for the sword's name. The smith thinks for a moment, recalling the knight who commissioned it, said he'd call it the 1,000-mile sword. A flicker of something, a memory, a decision crosses Damien's mind. He firmly sheathes his new weapon. The choice is made. Just as he's about to leave, a woman's voice calls out to him. "Did you find a weapon you like, Sir Damien?" Standing before him is a prim maid with glasses and braided hair, flanked by 2 guards. "Nice to meet you," she says with a curtsy. "I am Rebecca, and I serve Lady Chelsea." Her smile is polite, but her eyes are sharp. Rebecca explains that her lady has requested a meeting with him. Damien is immediately suspicious, coolly replying that he has nothing to say to her. Rebecca just chuckles. "Who knows about that?" she says playfully. "My lady has more than you'd think." She leans in slightly, her tone more persuasive. "You might be able to get something you need, Sir Damien." He sees right through it. She's trying to appease him. He decides to play along, thinking he needs to check something anyway. "Fine, lead the way," he agrees with a pleasant smile. Victor looks on, worried about what his master is getting into now. Rebecca leads them to a fancy, high-end building, explaining that this restaurant is operated by Lady Chelsea herself. It's an exclusive, reservation-only establishment for nobles. "Today," Rebecca adds, "the entire restaurant has been emptied so that you can come." This is a massive display of wealth and power, all for him. The sound of Rebecca's footsteps echoes in the empty, opulent hall. She stops before a set of ornate doors. "She is waiting inside," she says, her face unreadable. As the doors open, Damien walks forward, his mind racing, wondering what kind of offer Chelsea could possibly make. He stops short. A strange, sweet scent fills the air, thick with a powerful, familiar energy. That scent? Inside the room, Chelsea is pouring a glass of dark red wine, the liquid itself humming with that same energy. Her voice drifts across the room, smooth and alluring. "You're a bit late." She sits alone at a large table, surrounded by a swirling, hypnotic purple aura that fills the entire space. "Hurry and sit," she says, gesturing to the chair opposite her. She raises her glass, her red eyes glowing intensely as they lock on to him. A predatory smile spreads across her face. "Sir Damien Haxon." The invitation feels more like a trap. The air in the private restaurant is thick with a strange, sweet magic, but Damien cuts right through the pretense. He sits down and gets straight to the point, asking why she called him. Chelsea just smiles, suggesting they talk